With Harry L. Stearns, we're a lighting manufacturing rep in the Portland area. We represent all of Acuity Brands and ETC, which are the two large manufacturers you have in your building for lighting and lighting controls, right? Today I'm here to talk about operational training for the Nlight, the Acuity Nlight system, which is what's controlling all of your main spaces in your buildings and stuff like that. And is today also the operational training for ETC Theater?
That'll be tomorrow.
That'll be tomorrow?
Yes.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool. So we're just going to focus on Nlight today, which is great because I hate jumping back and forth because it confuses people. And then we'll go from there. So, can you guys go around real quick and just tell me who, like, I'm not going to remember your name, but it'll be nice to know it. But mainly, like, what job you have so I know who's here so I can kind of tailor stuff.
Probably the easiest thing to do is just have a show of hands of who's electricians here.
Oh, yeah? Who's electricians? Holy cow. So and who's the remaining? Energy management, awesome.
And the phone is the janitor.
Janitor. Custodian.
Right?
Smack. And then were you an electrician? Okay, cool. Man. So I used to be a construction project manager for the Beaverton School District. So I used to like build schools, like his job, you know. Except I actually like got paid by the district. And they had 2 electricians when I was there for their entire district. So this is amazing. This is.
Yeah, 90.
Yeah.
By the time the schools.
Yeah. Well, they have 90. They have 89 schools in Beaverton. They're just much smaller than yours. They're tiny schools, which could be worse, right? Because there's so many different types of systems. But that's awesome. This is exciting. So, and I'm glad so many of you made it. When I do trainings out there, generally one guy shows up, and it may or may not be the electrician. So, anyways, I'm diverting off course here. So, we will try to keep things moving along today. As you can see from the training agenda on the first sheet, you know, is a little sign-off form. We'll have one of you sign it saying that I completed training today or whatever. But right below that is an LC&D. You guys don't have LC&D. We're going to focus on the back of the sheet. So, and on the back of this sheet is basically in that gray box is kind of what we're going to do today. It looks dense. We'll get through 2/3 of it, you know, pretty quickly actually. So, you guys, this is Jason. Speaking of introductions, he's the guy that did most of your programming in the space while I was here. He's one of our newer guys, and this was kind of his check ride. So, but I was here the whole time, so it's all good. Yes?
He's going to cover the exterior lights too?
Say that one more time?
Exterior lights?
Yes. Yeah. It'll cover that too. So he's here, and he's going to train us on the operational side of things. Like this is an office space, and this is what this button does, and this is how this works, and this is what you can expect. He'll talk about the exterior lights and when they come on, when they go off, and then I'm here to talk about how do you get into your system and how you make changes. So, and we'll kind of go through them there. If there is anything else that someone wants me to specifically cover, now would be a good time to let me know so that I can make sure I make it a part of the training. So, like exterior lights, I got that. Anyone else have any specific questions?
Basically, interior lights, basically, when they're not going off, you know, which ones are on, timers, and which ones aren't.
Oh, sure, yeah. While we're walking around, Jason will cover that per building, per space, saying, you know, this is a hallway space that does this or that. And you guys also, I also passed around when it comes to sequences. This sheet, this is the sequence of operations, and Jason will go through a bunch of that and kind of explain it. It's just, you know, this space does this, you know, type of thing. So hallways.
Do you have emergency lighting in this building with you on 24/7? Is there certain lights?
No, night lights are no longer legal.
I came in this morning, I had hallway lights on.
Right. That means that there was an occupancy sensor of some sort that got triggered, or a time clock hit and turned the lights on. What is the time clock for the hallways? When do they?
I believe it's 6 to 6.
6 to 6 at the moment. So, so at 6 a.m. the hallway lights go to 25%.
Halls go to 50 when they're unoccupied during the day, and then to 100 when they are
But at 6
occupied.
o'clock, do they switch off completely?
No. What they do is they change behavior, and so at 6 o'clock, the system still works on the occupancy sensor. So if it's occupied, it will be at 100%, and when it's unoccupied, it will be 0 instead of 50%.
So it'll be off.
Yeah.
So every room has an occupancy sensor?
We're talking about hallways at the moment.
But the rooms, they do have occupancy sensor?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do they have...
Closets do.
Well, they do. Can I
Yeah.
find it when tomorrow my dinner?
Yeah, we'll go through a bunch of them. It really depends on your closet too, and what the engineer put.
Upstairs in the top of the auditorium, you go in that door on the top balcony up there. We walked in this morning and nothing came on, so we had to find a switch to turn it on. And the contractor's in there this morning.
Storage room up there.
Not storage, the main auditorium top, the balcony.
Oh, the balcony. So that's completely different. That's a specialty space, which we'll talk about tomorrow. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Troubleshooting?
Troubleshooting?
Yeah, if we could put that into the day's talk, that'd be great.
Sure.
Most of us are here to troubleshoot for when things go down.
Perfect. So after we get done with the operational training about what button does what, so bear with me until we get to the end of that, I'll show you, I have my toolbox here of parts and pieces, and I can literally pull a piece out of the box and say, this is this piece, and this is how it goes together. And I have the submittals on my computer. It's a lot of people to huddle around my computer, but I can set it up so you guys can look at that and then look at the parts and pieces and kind of figure it out. So.
Cool. Is there a way to get a copy of this submittal?
You will get everything through O&Ms, through
Yes.
the EC will pass it on to the GC, GC will pass it on to your
And we'll have
rep.
both a hard copy in the janitor's office, custodial office, and then we'll also have one, we'll have a digital one as well, that you guys can access online.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
And then any of these trainings as well, you guys, which we've been doing now for weeks and weeks, we are going to be slowly here in the next couple of days. It should all be uploaded to, I guess PPS has their own YouTube channel. So I didn't know that, but apparently you have your own YouTube
I don't
channel
need
where
this,
it's
so let's put this
online. Anyway, all of these videos will be on there that you guys can access at any time. So.
And would that be with all the as-built too? We'll go through that process?
Yes, that's right. That's correct. So.
Cool. Any other stuff? Awesome.
You're talking about nights. It's not legal to have lights on at
Yeah,
night.
that's interesting. I never heard of that.
So you cannot have lights that don't have means of control of turning them off.
It can't just be on like that's the normal operating procedure.
Yeah. So since 2014, the Oregon Energy Specialty Code dictates that you cannot use night lights. The egress lighting that you guys are always used to being the night lights in your building have to be controlled by occupancy sensor, by time clock, or means of a third-party integration to a device that says the building's occupied. Security system.
School
So,
specific?
no.
For schools only?
No, it's for commercial buildings.
All together, because we just did that.
We just,
We just did a job where we put all kinds of in a
Yeah, brand new building.
brand new
Yeah.
over at Reed College.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, technically it doesn't meet code. Yeah, and depending on the inspector that you get, it matters. But sometimes you find good inspectors. I have found that downtown Portland really particular.
This is an energy management
Yeah.
thing is what
This-
it was.
this
They
is
didn't
his
want to burn them all
department.
night long.
We blame him. But yeah, I mean, it's not an NEC code; it's an Oregon specialty code.
Gotcha. Right,
Yeah.
right.
So.
So, if the permit is pulled before it's implemented, then maybe that's something.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, they could have pulled it before.
That's true. This job's been going on a long time. Yeah. Well, I mean, through design, and it was a 2-year build, and and you think like 2 years before that. Actually, the design of this job started while I was constructing the new middle school in Beaverton when I was a project manager, and it's the same design team. So that's how long ago. My school's been operational for almost 4 years now, so it's just saying.
Yeah, this has been in the queue for over 4 hours.
Yeah, really long time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, any other things I got to hit? All right, let's get rolling so you guys aren't on your feet all day long. So I'm going to pass it over to Jason. Jason's start with like hallways and kind of what they do and the automatic and exterior, and then he's going to take us around to specific rooms that are representative of rooms throughout the building, and we'll walk the whole space, and we will show you where things are. We'll show you where we'll end over on the other side of the building at something that we call the Nessie, which is like the brains, and we'll just show it to you over there, and then come back here and talk about the Nessie here because it's a much larger space. Because you have a Nessie here and you have a Nessie over there. The Nessie is the head end, it's how we access things. So we'll learn about that when I do the parts and pieces at the time. So, oh, sorry. I like to be in control.
Yeah. I like it when he's in control.
And just tell me to jump in anytime you want me to. So.
Okay. Hi. As he said, my name's Jason, and this is kind of the first time I've done this, so A, please forgive me for skipping anything, and B, please ask any questions if I do skip something, because obviously I don't want to short you guys on anything you need to know. I'm told that what I'm supposed to do is sort of tell you how these rooms work in terms of switching. Pretty positive this is a storage room, since we're standing here. So storage rooms are, my cheat sheet here, set to occupancy mode, and they have a 10-minute timeout. So 10 minutes after they don't see anything, the lights shut off automatically. Standard on-off switch, lights are going to go out, back on. Storage, we were given a fairly limited number of choices on what to do things, so all of the storage rooms should act the same. Oh yes, sorry. That would be there's no photocells, there's no lights in here, exterior daylight to impact it at all. And the 10 minutes was off of the occupancy sensor. Occupancy sensors detect you. Should probably start a little bit. They're passive infrared and microphonics, so they will see body heat as it moves around, and so that's how it detects movement. And then the microphonics, it can hear and detect to know if somebody's in tapping their pencil. That's going to set it off so it doesn't turn.
So there's a big difference, if you guys have used watch software in the past, there's a big difference between ultrasonic and microphonics, right? Ultrasonic listens for noise that moves through a space, right? So it uses the Doppler effect to understand what the noise is doing in the space, and it's an active technology, so it consumes power, right? So there's a lot of power needs on those devices. Microphonics is a passive device, and it's literally just a microphone, and it's looking for leading edge sounds, or someone using consonants, that type of thing.
Would a washer and dryer trigger that?
Yeah. And microphonics will keep lights on, they won't automatically turn lights on. So
you leave and you turn the light off and this is running.
Yes.
You're probably good.
There is a grace period, so if the lights shut off, right, you have like 10 seconds, I believe. I always forget, but 10, yeah, he's nodding at me. So 10 seconds where you got a teacher that's quiet at the desk and his lights shut off. He doesn't have to get up and manually turn the lights on. He could just go, hey, and the lights will turn back on. And he doesn't have to turn it on.
The clarification there is that if you turn the switch off, it's not going to come on because of motion or sound. It's when it times out, it'll come back on, right?
So it depends. There's a couple different sequences that are in the space, right? So is this auto on, auto off in this space?
This is occupancy in this space, yes.
Okay, so this is occupancy. So what happens in this space is that the lights will automatically turn on, they'll automatically turn off under normal operations. The light switch, think of it as an override, right? If you hit off, you're overriding the automatic function of the lights. They won't turn back on unless you hit the on button. But if you leave it on, the lights will shut off when no one's in the space. And they'll automatically turn back on when they come back into the space.
Where is the occupancy center on this one?
There's one there.
Couple down there.
Okay. So there's more than one. So the opposition has a time that though. So if you turn it off, then you leave and then eventually it'll time so when someone walks in, the occupancy will work.
No.
It won't work.
It is an override to the automatic function. Yeah.
Okay.
Think about it like in a classroom space or like a small conference room with a projector. You're doing a presentation or whatever. You don't want the lights to automatically come on in the middle of it, right? You're overriding the function of the space.
So the wall switches actually hand off auto.
Yes.
And
yes.
put it in and off or put it in manual. You're basically telling it what it's going to do. So it doesn't work in auto once you turn it into manual.
Correct.
So if you put it in manual, I don't know, you probably don't have a switch over there. Let's say it's an auto and you go into the electrical room, you work in there for a while, and you come back out. It's not going to see you until the sensor does, right?
Right.
Okay. If somebody hasn't turned it off over there, if they manually turn it off over there and you're still in the electrical room, when you come out, it's not going to turn off.
No. If you have not turned it off manually, it will come back on when you come back into the room.
Somebody else did.
If someone else manually turned it off, it will not.
Do we have switches in all the rooms back here have the same switch? Or they all just ran off this one switch in their back rooms?
I don't remember. We've been doing this job for...
Kind of depends on the room,
Yeah.
but
So I know guys working back there don't want somebody to put the lights off on and kill them. That's how you through.
there's also a number of rooms that are just regular old toggle switches, which are not part of the Enlight system.
In this room, with the general operating procedure should be don't touch the light switch because it does it all on its own automatically. You don't. As a general procedure, you don't.
Blank it off so that
Well,
nobody does.
Yeah, you just don't need to hit it.
That'd be nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Classrooms, I
Boy, we
know
don't
some of the
need
classrooms are the same way when you walk in, but I want the teachers to leave them on because there's no reason to turn them off unless you have something major in the classroom, right?
Classrooms have a different sequence, which we can get to when we get there. This is a storage space, this room.
So we're going to walk around and talk about different spaces. And when it comes to, oh, is there a button here, or is there a button there, why isn't there a button? We can't answer the why isn't there a button here because that's an engineer question. We were told to place the parts and pieces where they are, and then we were told how to make the sequence. So asking the question, why is this room like that? That's actually an engineer question. That's not an us question. So, yeah, we just sort of do what we're told, kind of like your work orders. So,
I got a question about functionality that you might be able to answer. So if this sensor fails, will the switch act in default as an on-off switch versus an automatic switch?
So yes, it will. This is we'll talk more about that during the parts and pieces part of the training. But all of this is distributed technology, so everything works independently of each other. And so when one thing fails, something else takes over. So. All right, next space.
Any other questions?
Which line item, these aren't numbered, which line item is this space categorized under on the matrix?
I'm not sure which one. Should be under storage.
Also, this says it's for middle school. I'm assuming it's this.
That's a typo.
Okay.
There should be a, actually, it's under, I got mine right slightly, large storage room.
Large storage room. So 10 minutes.
Yeah, 10 minutes after the last hit, after the last sensed
So if
item.
something happens and we need to reprogram it, is it like a remote that we point
We'll
at?
get into that after the parts and pieces,
Okay.
because that's a pretty big rabbit hole. So
Okay.
I will. I can manage it better when we're
All
looking
right.
at the computer. So
So on this matrix, if you look at large storage room, the first checkbox under network is no. So that, and that's just a key distinction, that this switch is programmed locally. If the checkbox is on the next column over, which is yes, then a control panel somewhere in the building can be utilized to adjust that programming, which we'll get into.
yeah, and you guys will get a better understanding of that when we're doing parts and pieces, and I'm showing you a one-line diagram. You'll understand what is network and what is local and how to determine it. So, based off of this in the book. So,
All right, let's go. Keep the show rolling.
Another big visual.
Not sure how far we should go, maybe this larger area here.
This is awesome.
Jason, so he's not alone.
All by myself. Are we all good? This is a hallway. It's sort of indicative of all of the hallways, meaning the corridors, the common spaces to move in and out and around the building. The hallways are set for a workday and non-workday time, so that's the 6 to 6.
We'll tell you how to change that later if you don't like that time. So.
Fair enough. During the day, during the workday, they are set to go down to 50% at 10 minutes, I think it was, if I remember correctly. That is an automatic thing. The network controls that. The fixtures control that. After hours, they're set to go to 0. So that's the big difference. Actually, I take that back. It isn't 10 minutes. What's that?
Yes.
They're at 100 right now.
I want to clarify, that's coming from the FAM, that's how they want these buildings to function, because after hours, they want the building to be dark so that they know where there's people in the building. I mean, it's a security thing. They want to be able to literally drive by, and see where the people in the building, because the lights are on or not on. So they want it actually to go to dark.
I thought that building was closed. Why are the lights on?
So what's the protocol on at night if we see lights on? What do we do first? Check, make sure the switch is off, like the halls, or what?
Generally, so for troubleshooting that, if the lights are on, generally someone was there, right? And it's in an occupied state, or 2, someone was there and a sound is keeping it on. Right.
It might be sound.
Right.
We want to
So
check that and see if it's sound after we know no one's there. We know no one's there.
Yeah.
Because the sound matters.
Yeah. So let's say that a teacher's came in. I don't know if they have after hours access or not, but let's say that someone came in. They're in their workspace. They have the lights on. They turn the radio on because they were typing away or whatever. They leave, but leave the radio on. Those lights will not turn.
So I need to notify the staff in the building they can't have radios going after night, because sometimes you have teachers leave the radios on, like you said. So we need to, that's something we need to bring up. Thank you.
Or aquariums or animals, or rats or mice.
We got that.
That is actually accurate. I've had issues.
So the whole district's going to be lit up.
I have had rodent issues that would turn lights on. It took me like a month and a half to figure out what was going on. I was like, my programming is right. What is wrong? I replaced parts and pieces, and then we figured out that they had a
aquarium
problem.
motor will turn lights on, keep them on, and certain things will keep.
Yeah.
Well, I understand, blanket, no aquariums. It's just, you got to understand if the lights are staying on in that room and there's an aquarium, that's probably the reason.
So after 6 o'clock, the default is no occupancy, no sound, it's off. And then when it is, the sensors are tripped, then
it comes on.
100% or it's on 50%?
Full.
It always comes on to full when there's people occupying
Can we
space.
adjust that timer in case we do end up with a room that has noise? It's always left on. Can energy management change that?
Yeah. Once we get to the programming or the maintenance section of the training, we can show you that. I need my computer to show you. So.
Is there an ability to set it so that there's a second, like, we want the lights to start at 6 is when we want them to start going off when there's no occupancy. But is there a way to trigger another reset of the sound?
Yeah, so we the modes of operation is what I'll call it. Mode being business hours, one mode. Mode 2 being after hours operation. That's something that we call profiles that we can talk about when we're showing the computer. But you can put an infinite number of profiles, so you can have your hallways act differently every minute of the day if you want.
But we could do at 10 o'clock occupancy unoccupied number 2 at 10 o'clock, and it would reset all the settings would do the same, but it would just reset the sound sensors back to, because everybody's out of the building usually by 10. Right?
There is no way to like you can put a sweep in place, like you can put a minute override off to here and then go back on. I don't believe that you guys are going to have problems with the sound. Generally what happens is that you'll find 1 or 2 spaces after we leave that stay on or whatever, but during the programming section of the training I'll show you guys how to adjust the sound function. You can lower its sensitivity or you can shut it off completely. So.
You guys saying that 6 o'clock is when the light's supposed to go off?
Yes.
No, wait.
No.
Yeah, I'm not
I like
done
that.
talking.
6 o'clock, that means we're moving to the hall.
So-
They just changed the settings of it.
Yeah, so at 6 o'clock the lights are allowed to go off, right? So because 24/7 the hallways are on occupancy sensors. It's just whether during the unoccupied times whether the light goes to 50% or whether the light goes to 0. That's the only change that happens.
But you guys said that the purpose of this is security. To see if you drive by to see if anybody's in the building.
Right.
In these buildings, somebody's going to be in here until 10 o'clock because they work until 10
We'll
o'clock.
be here until midnight.
Yeah, but they're working on
So that was dictated to us by the district or by the engineer. That was the reason that was given to us for it. We don't really know.
So if somebody's working on the 3rd floor, after 10 minutes, all the lights in the rest of the building will be off, and only the 3rd floor will have lights on. So if Stetson drives by, he knows what part of the building and what level his custodians are in. And then if they walk down to the 2nd floor, after 10 minutes, the lights on the 3rd floor will shut off, and the 2nd floor will be the only floor with lights. And again, when Stetson drives by, he can see exactly where his custodians are.
And it's also a safety thing that somebody in the building we didn't catch when we were in the building, we can actually look back and say, hey, lights are on, there's somebody up there.
Yeah, I haven't been up there in 10 minutes. It should be off.
Yeah, 'cause some teachers stick around and never leave. I mean, literally, you have to escort them out the door. Oh, I got one more thing to do.
Hey, I used to be a teacher. We have important things to do.
with these badges, though, they'll be able to just never leave.
So as far as troubleshooting the devices, if one of the occupancy sensor goes out, like here next to the door, will it fault on? Or does it go off?
No.
Or is there?
No, it won't fault on because there's other occupancy sensors within the space. But we'll get to that during parts and pieces and maintenance and that type of stuff.
Okay, because I was just thinking like a corner like this. There's only one. I guess there's 2. I guess they placed them all over the place.
Yeah. So there is.
They like double lapped over.
There is in some of the halls, like there is one in this hall, isn't there? Yeah. So there's a key switch over here. You can turn it off and turn it back on. That will override it. You know, because in let's say that all of your occupancy sensors went away, right? It's going to default to a manual operation. So turn on, and it will go. So.
Or if we need
Does it
to
default to on or off?
It defaults into automatic. So it defaults into a manual state. So it depends on what state it was in when it failed.
Ryan, on these sensors, do they have a microphone built into all of them, or just
Yes,
some of them?
all of them.
Okay.
And are all of them turned on, or some?
All of the, well, there's a few of them that we noted, and like if you get down into our weeds of programming that we turn to low or whatever. We don't actually suspect that you need it at low. It's just when we were programming, they were also balancing the HVAC units.
Oh.
And so we're like, these lights aren't testing out right. Let's turn the microphone down a little bit. It's still going to work. So instead of the teacher going, hey, hey, he has to go, hey, hey, and it won't work. So.
Are they all low voltage sensors? Or
Yes. Yeah. We'll get. Let's get through the operational. This is what this space does. This is what this space does. And during the parts and pieces, we explain all that. You know, it goes a lot faster. So.
Hallways, stairwells are all programmed the same. We're standing right in front of a restroom. Make sure. Restrooms are occupancy. This one actually doesn't happen to be Nlight, so it's foolish for me to have opened that door. My apologies.
It's sensor switch. There is a mix between Nlight, which is a network system, and sensor switch, which is a low volt system, and we're training on the NSA systems.
Small restrooms, which are set for 5-minute occupancy, and then the full-size ones, which we'll see in the other space, are set for 10.
Does it have microphones in them?
Yes.
If it's got if it's Nlight. This one I don't know.
So again, you don't trip on with sound. You maintain on. Yeah, you maintain on with sound, unless it's within the grace period of the off, right? So in order to turn the lights on, you have to walk, move across, use the passive infrared, right? The lights will stay on. The sound will help keep the lights on, right?
The sound will turn the light on.
Exactly.
Right. And
5 minutes, whatever that is.
yeah, and then if a person's sitting on the pot not making noise for a long time, the lights are going to go off, right? Unless they make a sound. And if they make a sound within that 10-second grace period, the lights will come back on, and they can know when they're clean.
If they miss the 10 seconds, then you have to walk.
Yeah, they have to wipe from the dark.
Well, in that 10 seconds, then they have to make the big arm motion, which trips it off.
Get off.
But again, it's just the small restrooms that are 5. The larger ones are 10. Do we want to go to the other building, or is there?
Let's do what we can in this building, and then we'll walk through the other building and show them where the hallway overrides are, or where their main space overrides are.
Let's go right through the staircase, right on.
Let's go right on up to the first mezzanine.
Yep.
Stairwells also have a different type of occupancy sensor. Instead of a ceiling mount, there's a wall mount. It's 180 degrees. It does have an up. It does have a down. It's mounted correctly right now. But if you guys take it off and put it back on, make sure you put it on the same orientation, or else the sensor will pick up people. They'll pick up the ceiling and not the floor.
Is it like engraved on the back of it or something?
It's I believe there's an arrow. It's basically the adjustment knob where you tilt down. That's towards the top. So. Yeah, that's the wall mount. And if you want to see one, if you look out the door up to the left, you'll see one.
So this space is, we classified this as a hallway because it was an egress entrance corridor space. It was the closest thing we could come to that. There is one major change in this space from the other, is that there is 4 switches that control these overhead track lights and the center section-y thing. We'll walk back there in a minute. It's a little crowded because it's in a little closet off of the restroom over there, so all 10 of a pile of us piling in. Surrounding us are classrooms for this space, which is probably easiest if we walk in here. We can talk about a couple of items that are happening. Probably should have started in here now that I'm realizing. No reason to move twice.
It's a very low.
Oh, there you go. Oh, you had to turn it on manually?
I just did.
Gives them opportunity to sit down.
Oh, there you go. One of the few times in your work career. Feel here? Oh. So, classrooms, we call this a classroom, and all of the classrooms generally have 2 zones of operations. This classroom is not wired up specifically that way, but it's usually a zone near the front so that they can turn it down for the video, and then the rest of the classroom. There'll be Depending on the room, there'll either be 2 buttons or a 2-pole switch to make that operation. Classrooms are what we call semi-auto or vacancy, which means the teacher has to turn the lights on and then they go off when nobody else is in the room. And light is not in every classroom, so that is just FYI, but my understanding is they're all programmed the same way.
Yeah. So the other classrooms are sensor switch. They're the low voltage device. The sequence is the same as the N light ones. It's just in order to program those, you have to do the push button programming. So if it's a sensor switch device, you do push button programming, and you look at a machine and go, all right, get into mode 1, 2, 3. I want menu 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You guys are all 9, like you've been through this hell before.
Yeah.
So it was a VE item on the job, and so things went from N-Light to sensor switch. So no gallery. But yeah.
So just stressing, unlike the spaces we've been in before, this one you do have to turn the lights on, but then they go off by themselves. So manual on, auto off. The other difference in this room is that we do suddenly have the photocells operating here. Those lights are not dim because they're broken, they're dim because this photocell is detecting the light from this window and adjusting this area to deal with the fact that this area is bright enough without those being on at full.
So specifically the way the ceiling mount photocells work is that it works on the reflective properties of the space, right? So it senses the light that hits the floor and bounces back up to the sensor, right? So if you will notice that some spaces are more responsive than other spaces, and a lot of that is the environment of which it is around. If the ground is very dark, your sensors are going to be less responsive because more responsive because we're looking for smaller amounts of light because it doesn't reflect much. So like let's say that I haven't been to all the classrooms here because I didn't program everything, but a lot of times like that chemical resistant counter, that black counter, that absorbs every ounce of light. It doesn't like reflect at all, right? And then the teacher goes, all right, everyone get their butcher paper out to draw how microbes work or whatever, and they pull out a sheet of butcher paper that's white, the lights are going to go dim. Because of that reflective property of that light. So if you guys get calls saying, hey, my lights are dimming by themselves in random times in the middle of the day, honestly, the biggest thing in like science classrooms is that they pulled out white butcher paper and put it underneath the sensor. So, and there's not much you can do about that because it's just reflecting light more. How was the science?
Cover the sensor temporary.
So, what's that?
Cover the sensor temporary to make them happy.
Well, you didn't hear this from me. I'm not on mic. But if you just unplug the Cat5 cable, the sensor doesn't work anymore. So, yeah.
Nobody I've heard of has ever done that. Never once.
You can do that to save.
Correct. Yeah.
So if we have a room that has a lot of complaints for lighting, we need more lighting for that room. Can we adjust the controls on that?
So it depends on the type of room, right? This room, no, because this room was designated as on-off, right? And that's why you don't have dimming switches over here, right? Like classrooms that have like, are these scenes or dual poles in the classroom? I forget.
Dual poles.
Dual poles. So you have 2 poles in the classroom. You can turn each zone on and off. One's an AV zone, one's a general zone, and it has dimming. Those zones that have raise and lower, luckily because we're in Oregon, code allows you to dim higher than the photocell value is limiting it. If you were in Oregon, I would have to say tough luck.
In California.
No, Washington.
Washington.
Yes. Yeah, just because we're so close to the river. They actually do have more stringent codes than we do in Oregon.
So is this room, this need to be fixed because it's left, right, not front, back?
No, it doesn't need to be fixed. It's done for plan.
It's planned wrong.
That's an engineering question.
So as far as the timing,
that 6, these will go to 0 instead of 50% like these.
No, these are not on the time clock. These are independent from the network.
Oh, okay.
So think of this as an independent room. It doesn't impact any other rooms in the building, and it's all within this space. And
time clocks only affect hallways.
hallways and exteriors.
Okay. So this doesn't have 50%, 100%,
No.
or 0%. It's all just programming in the switches, right?
It's all programming in this room, in this system, the photocells and the occupancy sensors and the switches.
Do you guys happen to know about the shades? Are they going to be?
I know nothing about shades.
They're here. I'm just trying to get the guy over this.
And are those supposed to get pulled down daily or something? Is that going to impact that light?
That's completely up to the teacher whether she wants them, or he or she wants them.
So it's just a manual.
Well, what you're talking about are the motorized shades in the gym and
The two forums.
The two forums. The two forums?
Yeah.
I think those automated shades, those motorized shades, are also set on a schedule to roll up every night or something like that. Because they're supposed to have an open school, open atmosphere, open environment. And so those shades are all set to automatically roll up. So whatever preference somebody had the night before, it's wiped out. They all go back up the next day. The auditorium is not going to be on that schedule because we don't know when anything in performance is going on to roll up, and they're probably going to be down most of the time anyways, and they don't need to be pulled back up.
Let's face it, drama teachers do whatever they want. I can say that I was one.
And in order for it to be automated roller shades, we had to upgrade them because we couldn't physically make manual ones go that far.
Any other questions about the classroom spaces?
So when the lights just went off in here, is that because it was doing some photos?
It was me pushing the button.
Oh, you were
Yeah, right.
Okay.
So I think, to me, this is a room where we'll probably need to, I don't know how complicated it is to switch it, but this is a room that needs to be looked at. I don't know how many cameras it is, but...
Yeah, mainly for us it is easy. It's the electricians that have work, because it's a copper issue. It's like where the switch legs are connected.
You have two automated relays, and they're hardwired to one bank of light versus another bank of light. You don't really care which bank it is.
So here's the weird part, right? So the submittals are done, which is what you guys will see, is not our design. We're literally just putting our devices on top of the engineer devices. So if the engineer called for this bank and this bank, that's what we did. If the engineer called for that bank and the rest of it, that's what we did. It wasn't. We don't have a conscious choice of, we don't know what the space is. We don't know what it's eventually going to be used for. We're not a part of that team. We're just responding to the guy that is supposed to know that information and pass it on to us.
No, I totally understand that. How to make changes.
How to make the changes?
Future.
Yeah, you just add another remote switch and program it. So in spaces like this, to make people's lives easier, you don't necessarily have to get in and program things. You can, getting into the parts and pieces stuff, but all of our devices work on channel 1 out of the box, right? You plug a switch in, you plug a power pack in, you plug an aux sensor in. They will all work automatically, so that's auto on, auto off, and on channel 1. So they'll all be responsive to one another out of the box. Channel 2, which this has a channel 1 and channel 2 for the switching. You can purchase power packs that are specifically channel 2, right? So in spaces that only have 2 channels of control, you can buy the channel 1 or you can buy the channel 2. So what I'm saying is that you can add a power pack without actually adding programming. So that helps answer that question. So.
Where are the power packs located? Is there one per room, so like a room controller?
Where is this?
The power packs actually, I believe, are relays.
In this space?
Oh, no, not in, yes, in this
Okay,
space,
so in this particular space, it's on a relay panel.
I think.
Yeah.
I want to check.
So
I might be lying. One second.
We're going to end up there because we're going to do training on the relay
So there's like a few in the whole building.
Yeah, and they're all listed on the submittals and like where they're basically almost every electrical room has a relay panel.
I think I lied. I apologize. I think there are power packs in here, and I'm not sure where they're located.
It's that particular question, because we're not wire folks, is actually an electrician question.
Yeah.
But
Sorry.
most of the time, if it's not on a relay panel, the power packs are either in the ceiling if it's dropped, but in open spaces like this, the electricians probably hid it behind something, like in the next room, in the electrical room, just outside in the hallway, something like that. If you, and the easiest way to find it is just to follow the low voltage, like you find an off sensor, right? There's no power going to that, so you know it's a Cat5 cable. And that Cat5 cable has to touch that power pack, so you just follow the conduit.
How many power packs per? I know you'll probably get into that later.
Well, that's the
Per
question.
sensor, how many power? Like, is it one per sensor or one?
Space
power pack?
dependent, sequence dependent. So every space is pretty much different.
I'm trying to think of any electricians in now.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So you could have like 3 sensors on one power pack.
Yep.
So think of it along the lines of the power packs that are running this room, all of the sensors are talking to the 2 that are running this
Power
room.
packs are in the room.
So just me not knowing anything about this in particular, I just tracked it, and they appear to go to the other side of this wall. That's a storage room with an ACT ceiling. On the side of that wall, the power packs are probably above the ACT.
Yep. That is likely correct. That's pretty common. If it's a drop ceiling, it's just generally in the ceiling against a wall somewhere. So.
And the power pack is where it's going to be talking to the main controller, right? Because they get power and they're talking to something. And
maybe we should have done parts and pieces first.
Right.
Yeah.
Generally do operational because it gets rid of people that don't care about parts and pieces. So and it generally goes faster. So this is a distributed technology, right? So all the programming resides on the occupancy sensor, resides on the switch, resides on the power pack, right? So there is no central brain.
So how do you program those?
There's a central access point for the network stuff, which is through the nesting, and then independent zones use an NCOM kit, which I'll show you guys when I get back down to my computer, which is basically a USB device you plug into your computer, and then you plug into the switch zone, like a little switch off the wall, end of line, and you plug in to the Cat5 line. And that's how you do it. So if it's an independent zone, and I'll show you on the submittal when I get there, how you can tell whether it goes to a network hub or if it is a standalone. Standalones, you have to pull the switch off the wall and you plug in. Networks, you can log into your network and talk to it.
So in this room, it's a standalone, isolated little classroom of programming, if you will, and devices. So if you guys were adjusting the programming, if I said I want it to go for 20 minutes before the lights turn out instead of 10 minutes or 5 minutes, whatever you have it set for, you would come in, you pull the switch off the wall, you plug in, and you upload the programming change to the switch.
You would open up the programming, the software to change the program.
So we have to download some software.
Yep.
So is that proprietary? Who can make those changes? Is there a custom device?
I really need to talk about this as all one thing. Like this is like a sit down. Like if I'm talking about parts and pieces and like programming in little globs and stuff, you guys are going to get really confused and have more questions. I'd really like to get through the sequence because I have to tell you guys that sequence. And show you where things are physically, and then we can sit down and do this ethereal stuff. Because if I don't take you through the process, you're going to get confused. So
That sounds perfect.
yeah.
So no more questions.
Just
where is this switch, where's these power packs,
Yeah.
and how does the space function, you know, how does the teacher turn on the space? Just sequence questions. That's where we're going to start, and then we'll come back and...
I have a question, but I won't ask yet.
Yeah, because like if I jump in the middle, you're like, because it's distributed, you're going to, like, if I jump in the middle, you'll be like, what? Like, it's just going to confuse you. So, all right, well, next zone.
Are we good?
Next type of zone.
In the closet here is the 4-pull switch that runs the individual zones of these overhead lights. There is another restroom directly upstairs with the same little closet and that same switch, which runs the similar banks of lights upstairs.
Yeah. So he's going to take it down. He'll show you where the button is, but it's a small space, so you have to cycle through.
Make sure you show the camera really clearly first. Let's do that.
It's actually a little difficult to see. It's right there. You can turn them on one at a time, on, off, or you can turn on all 4, or any combination. You can turn on 1 and 4 or 2 and 3. So it's pretty straightforward. This is also has a dimmer, so you can make the lights brighter or dimmer depending on the event or whatever they're having. I believe this was designated as sort of an art space, so the idea being you can display your art to whatever lighting ways you want. I think that's it.
This classroom is just standard switches, as you can see. It has a occupancy sensor in the middle with the power pack. It has a light level sensor which controls the lights on the far window. If you leave the switches on, like we had talked about at our meeting a couple weeks ago, basically the lights will come on if you leave the lights on when you walk in. When you walk back out, after the set time, I think it's 15 minutes or something like that, it shuts off.
Where does that...
This is pretty old school. There's no program. It's just power packs. And
So that must not be on the network, right? It's not on the
it
network.
is not on the network.
So that timer is in the power pack? So it's not working right, it's the power pack? Is that what you're saying?
Or it's picking up motion, yeah.
And that's with manual light switches on the wall. Okay.
So it's auto off, auto on.
And same thing with the other little sound effect too? That would keep
Once it triggers the first time, then sound keeps it on.
How does the state of the switches control the system at all?
So you can shut the switches off and it shuts the lights off. It won't be able to turn on.
It's a disconnect. It shuts the power off to the system.
It's a standard thing you've seen for the last 30 years, I would say.
Okay.
You know, 30 years of it.
So when sound started up,
No.
sound won't turn on. It'll
No.
just keep it going.
It'll keep it going though, yeah.
All right.
So is it just mainly like certain types of classrooms? Like why? Like it's kind of hard to figure out.
All of the general classrooms are this style with the motion.
So that one was a science room, that's why it was different.
I'm not...
Art room.
No, it's an art room.
So a specialty room, an art room, small offices, conference rooms, those would all go back into the digital control.
Is there a way we can tell the difference, like just by
Look at the switch.
the
If it's a normal switch, it's going to be the analog.
Okay.
If it's a digital switch, it's...
So if it has the on/off written on it.
Yeah.
And the other difference is the green LED is the N-Light system, so that's the more programmable, and the white is the sensor switch, if that helps at all.
What's green?
Green,
Green LED.
it's a color. I don't understand the question, sorry.
Where do we see green?
Oh, on the switch.
The letters that say off or on or green?
Like if a light comes on the
Indicator
switch.
light.
Yeah, well, as soon as I see a switch, it was the people who cycled through the bathroom saw it, and the switch that you pushed had green and on it on the wall.
Like an indicator light.
It was a little indicator light.
You said the white is not N-Light?
The white is sensor switch.
Let's head off to the next space. You want to do common?
Large restrooms are slightly different than the smaller ones insofar as there are no switches. They're just occupancy sensors. They're on a 10-minute timeout. Each little room has an occupancy sensor which controls the whole restrooms area, in addition to the standard ones in the ceilings. And you kind of have to sneak up on these if you want to see them go on. They are, like I said, they're automatic, but they have a pretty good range on them. Like you walking down this hallway, we'll kick those on.
Did you say that in the bathroom, basically any occupancy sensor triggers all the lights?
Yes.
So every stall lights up if one stall has voltage?
Yes. This is one section of lighting, and all of the occupancy sensors talk to the power packs that run it.
And where are the power packs here? Ceiling tiles.
They're up and
So walking in, just coming in here will not turn on the ones that are in toilet area.
No, yes. Everything comes on all at once. And anybody sitting in that toilet will keep all the lights on.
So this is the sensor here.
That's one of them, but then there's one in each stall as well.
So no buttons or switches in any of the stalls?
No buttons or switches. These are all automatic. They're also independent from the network. This is another standalone zone. There's no switches for this area. It doesn't operate on the time clock or after hours or during hours. It's all just on/off by the occupancy sensors.
Adam, did you get that clarification?
Is it on the network?
Not on the network.
No. This is a standalone area, like a classroom. It's not on the network. And you said there's no switches.
No switches at all. Just occupancy sensor.
So the only way to turn these lights out, you turn one breaker off, it turns them all out. So
Now you're getting into that gentleman's purview.
Is that right?
Yeah, to shut these lights off would be great.
So if one of the sensor goes bad, the other one will take over, right?
Every sensor in here will turn all of the lights on.
So we wouldn't be able to
It
troubleshoot
won't be,
unplugging all of it.
It's going to be hard to know when one of them goes bad.
That I will agree with.
So it's basically a wired like that light stream you saw, where it's got standard sensors, but they're all in parallel, not individualized, and there is no on-off control other than those devices and the main breaker or breakers.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's this. So like the center area here has emergency and regular lighting, so there's going to be 2 power packs.
So you'll have to wait until whatever 6 of them die.
Jason, is this tied to the hallway lighting or just tied to the e-sensors?
It's not tied to
This
anything.
area doesn't care at all about our schedule for the corridors. It doesn't matter what time of day it is. This is its own little island. It doesn't care about occupancy or unoccupancy.
And to answer your second half of your question, the stalls are tied to this section, but not to this section.
So if we have a mouse that finds its way into that one, and that's where it's living all night long, everything's going to be on all night long.
Supposedly, don't there be like 3 feet tall? There has to be like a 3-foot tall thing to set it off. It's not just a mouse running through the hallways going to set the lights off.
It's a raccoon.
Raccoon.
I don't think it works that way, no.
So mice do set it off.
Heat moving across the sensor sets it off.
There's a different type of sensor.
It's PIR, yeah, it's passive infrared. And then the sound just keeps it on, same as all the other sensors that we talked about.
Who installed the occupancy sensors? Did you guys do it? Okay. And then
He just did programming, so we installed it, and then he commissioned it.
So every occupancy sensor, does it have the button to program the 10 seconds?
These are, again, the end light. These are the ones that you have to plug in to the end of line. Since there isn't a switch, you have to find the end of line. I think it's on the power packs.
Well, there'll be one end of line in the power pack,
And then another one is off of one of the sensors.
bigger stall there because we came down through the middle.
But if you would have to replace one of the sensors, just put it up there and you don't have to program or anything, just put it up.
No, they should just out of the box they'll work.
On, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Channel 1.
Can you plug in to the end of the line and like be like, oh, this sensor's out. I need to replace it.
Now you're getting into the things that Ryan kept asking you.
right, kids, let's
Moving on.
Going now.
I know.
Oh no, we're gonna
leave it in there. You're like, Lauren, this is where Lauren has to go.
No. If I'm asking questions, then you know you have some cafeteria.
But I know that he told me just said.
For like a typical room, you'll give us the package. Also that has labels on it, but it doesn't logo.
I've seen a lot of stuff like all over the place.
So the commons are broken into two sections. You've got this more of a hallway hard lid side, and then you can see the different lighting fixtures on that side. One switch controls one switch controls the other.
Those are programmable because of the green that's on them.
These are green lights, and that means that they're end light, which is where my purview comes from. I keep tapping your microphone, my apologies. But that's what, when I say it has green lights, that's what it looks like. The sensor switch has an LED that's a white light, and it's an easy visual way to determine between the two systems. These are also on a similar time clock to the hallways, meaning 6 to 6, 30-minute timeout during the day, 15 at night, 50% is the low value during the day, and then 0 is at night.
And just to clarify, by time clock, you mean like the programming on the computer, not...
And
There's no other device that's like the time clock device.
Oh, sorry. When I refer to the time clock, the head end, the NESI, the network controller, the individual zones, the classrooms, they are not on that controller, whereas all of the hallways and the larger zones that are on the network can be controlled by the timing. There's two kinds of time clocks that we have set up for this space. The exteriors, which are dusk to, somebody asked about that, which are dusk and dawn, 30 minutes on each side to give and those are automatic and are control the exteriors, and then the interiors, which is 6 to 6.
Do they take in consideration the time when the time changes in the spring and
the dusk to dawn is on an astronomical clock, and it's automatic. Theoretically, you'll never have to touch or make adjustments to that particular, to that particular thing, unless you choose to.
Is there a reason why we would want these switches exposed? I mean, this is the first time I've ever thought about that, but is in your guys' collective experience in this room, is this a good space to have students pressing buttons?
Yeah, it was a good place for them to press buttons.
It's an excellent space for them to press buttons.
We could put like at some of our porch lights, we have a switch by the door. Sometimes we put in wall astronomical timers for those lights, and so we've been putting some kind of bubble covers or something over that can lock out or tie wrap out. We could do that.
There's a bubble cover for it's not this training, but you can see right there, the Crestron entertainment controller.
That's not needed.
What's that?
That will definitely need.
I mean, the other side, and this gets into how you guys want to use the space, these can be disabled. Like, it's fairly easy in the program to disable them. If you don't need them to be operational at all for any reason. That's sort of one of those FYI.
Microwave, kids are going to put their food in, lay against the wall. It's better to put on.
Again, we're kind of falling into that for us. We did what we were told, which is to make these switches happen.
Let's say somebody breaks one of them. When you find a new one, do you have to program it, or is it just out of the box like the other one?
These ones will need to be programmed because they're on the network.
Who can do that? Well, we're going to get into that.
This gets into the stuff that I was told to stay away from. You're asking programming questions, which is part of the other part of the question.
Yeah, so when Jason's done with this, like you said,
We're going to go back and he can get as deep as you can possibly want. My head still swims when he gets talking. Like he knows it really deep. So switches here. Any other questions about the space before I start moving on? There is photo cell in both the common areas, so these lights over the seating area will dim to that photo cell, but the ones over this more corridory area will not. Say it again?
Why? Because the cameras?
Oh, because of it's the daylighting. It's similar to that little classroom we were in with, there's a photo cell that picks up the fact that there's daylight coming in and will dim the lights accordingly. One thing this switch does allow me to show you fairly straightforwardly is the extent of this zone, which ends down, you can sort of see where the lights start up down on that end of the hallway. The sensor zones and all of that go to there, and another section starts up. Which, Vic, do we want to look at the panel downstairs, or do we want to?
We can, or we can just talk about it.
Or work our way through.
There's a lighting control in.
There's also a hallway switch down there.
0 electrical room. A lot of us had already went through there earlier, and I pointed it out. If we wanted to look at it, it's a light box on the wall. We sure to look at.
You guys thought would that be beneficial to you guys? When we have been in there, we got it on video.
Just a relay panel.
There's a panel in the switch.
Yeah. So I think we're good.
So one thing with the switch, this building for the last 2-3 weeks, a month, has basically people come in the morning, the lights turn on. As you walk in here, it's turned on. No one has went somewhere and turned on corridor lights or anything like that. They just come on. So as far as the custodians, you don't need to go find a switch for the there we are. That's something.
But if I walk in the morning, I walk in the building, lights are popping up, and they go.
There is a switch in these rooms that you can turn those lights on if you so desire. And I think that gets into a style question. Some people might really like the fact that they know it's on.
So they turn the switch on. Will it turn off automatically after 6 o'clock?
Yes. This is the same. Think of that switch as exactly the same as a classroom switch we saw earlier. Only, you can override on, override off.
But when you turn it off on that switch, it takes going in and hitting that switch to turn it back on. No
Yes.
schedule, no motion, nothing will turn it back on.
Yes.
Including this one?
Say that again?
That's including this one.
So
if somebody comes in here and turns that off, there's going to be no lights in here until someone goes over there.
And turns it back on. I believe you are correct.
So I have one last question here for this space. In the basement of G, where we started this tour, we had the key light switches.
Yes.
Could those be switched to the same key light switch?
I'm sure it could.
Is it? I mean, it's the same kind of.
It's the same. Yes.
I think it's a different question.
So the reason you're kind of asking for the switches, why the design team chose to put them in here, is to shut them off if they're doing a video or something. Oh. Was the thought process. They just randomly set up
Really, they don't have children, but that can be done.
I don't think that.
It's good to have them as a local control for that exact reason. It's just we need something to keep them from being played with.
Yep.
Right. Like they should be inside the AV closet or whatever, right?
All right, Jason, on to the next.
So we don't need to see the relay panels. Nobody thinks that's a necessary thing. Then I guess the
library?
Moving down that way.
Hey, Tim.
Just literally, this is probably not even something that I should mention, but there is a light switch here and at the other door, which is Nlight for the kitchen. There are no occupancy sensors. It's literally like any other light switch that you've ever used. It just happens to be on our kind of system that I helped program, and so double check that it was there. There's one here.
That three-way between there
and then there's one at the other door to the kitchen on the other side of this hallway.
And it's not networked.
It is not networked. It's It's honestly, the only reason why I paused is because it happens to be slightly different than the other things that we've seen.
So unlike every other room in this building, you need to turn the lights, well not every other room, but almost every other room in the building, you need to turn the light switch off on your way out.
Yes. Like any other, a lot of the rooms in the building are actually like that. I believe I did not touch a lot of those other rooms. Vic can speak to them, but some of the electrical rooms, the more of those engineering kind of rooms have a standard toggle switch.
No aux sensor.
No aux sensor. The kitchen is the same as that. It just happens to look like it's Nlight, and then if you have to do any troubleshooting, it's an Nlight system.
So the toggle switch has to be inline, or
No, this one just happens to be.
it could be any kind of. If we need to replace that switch, we can put.
You would need to put Nlight. No, it's not a toggle. It's a regular. It's the same as those switches we just looked.
You got a green light, but it's not.
We have to have.
Yeah, it's actually one of those, like, I'm pausing for exactly that sort of question. This is an Nlight switch. It's an Nlight system. It just operates like a regular on-off switch.
So there is still like a relay and a power pack.
There's a power pack, but there's no occupancy sensor. They won't go off automatically. They won't come on automatically. The staff is in charge of that.
They look there where they're at.
Any other questions about this space? Moving on. The library is set up very similar to the Commons area that we just saw. The difference is that there is only one switch for the space, meaning it doesn't do the left and right. It does have a photocell, and same timeouts, 6 to 6, as the other common areas in the building. Switch is right there behind you.
Wow, turns out different times.
And I believe, unlike the Commons, since there's a doorway, there's another switch at the other end, which we'll see as we walk past.
This light switch doesn't run in the book room or the other rooms, does it? Is it all tied into this?
You mean these rooms behind this lady here? No, those are independent. They are separate from the network. This is on the network.
The only time they ever need to use this switch is when they want to darken the room when people are doing a movie or something. Okay.
Yeah, this room, again, similar to the halls and the Commons rooms, it'll come on when somebody walks in, shut off after 30 minutes during the day, 15 minutes at night, same 50%, and down to 50% during the day, and then down to 0 at night.
Now, if they put lamps in here, it's going to affect the lighting, right?
I don't understand that question.
Lamps.
Like a table lamp?
Big lamp, yeah.
It will, depending on where they place it, it may affect the photocell, because this also has the light harvesting.
So not a good idea.
It depends on where they put it. I try not to make value judgments about that sort of thing.
Counting a lumen, basically, threshold of a lumen.
Yeah, if you put a light directly under one of those light harvesters, it's always going to detect light and will always keep those lights dim, even at night.
You find a dark corner over there, though.
That's a different conversation.
We're talking about putting it in the middle and like, you want to make sure they do that point. You want to make sure they hurt that.
They're already talking about putting in that room.
Yeah.
Any other questions about this room, this space?
Yeah, I did have a question. I do.
Oh, hi. So just FYI, this, although it looks like it's part of the library, lighting-wise is an independent zone. I believe we have this set up as an office, which means that you have to turn the light switch on, and it'll go off automatically. So semi-auto for this one, 15 minutes. Has an occupancy sensor to tell you whether or not there's anybody in the room. The difference between this space and the one that you're standing in is that this is networked and runs off the time clock, the 6 to 6, whereas this is an independent zone all on its own. Can we go through here? The reason I brought you guys in here, this room is set up as an office space versus a classroom space, meaning There's just one switch. It controls the whole area. As you saw when I walked in, nothing happened. I had to turn the lights on. It's so vacancy mode. It's got a 15-minute timeout.
So you're saying that all the offices, these office spaces are...
All of the offices are on that schedule. There are a couple of odd exceptions, which is that there's a counseling area over here, which is sort of a reception with with hallways and a bunch of little offices attached to it. I believe we set that as auto for the reception area, auto on, and then the individual offices are set to manual.
With an occupancy sensor or no?
Always, yes, with an occupancy sensor. It does, but what that occupancy sensor is doing is waiting till there's nobody in the space to turn the lights off. This one you have to use a light switch to turn the lights on. There's another switch right over there. So one at each door.
If I'm a teacher and I forgot to shut it off, it'll shut it off.
It shuts off automatically. But again, the reason why I brought it in here is because this is an office space and indicative of the principal office, all of the counseling offices, the little ones.
They're not auto on?
They're not. These are they automatically shut off. Unless somebody hits the switch, which overrides the function, in which case somebody has to hit the switch back on before it'll automatically shut it off.
Makes sense.
You guys have heard that several times at this point. Should be pretty straightforward. Where's that panel? 1 second. I need to remember where the panel is for this space. I literally was just pausing. This is the locker rooms. The locker rooms work the same as the large restroom that we saw. Automatic on, auto off, no switch. It'll 10 minutes, yammer. It's just a subtly different room, and I figured it was worth mentioning out loud that's what it is. And then the teacher offices that are attached to these areas down here are like any other office.
Turn it on when you walk in the room.
You turn them on when you walk in the room.
And you can leave, and they'll automatically shut off after 15 minutes.
Exactly.
Okay.
Memorized. You have heard this speech once before.
Trust me, there'll be more questions, I guarantee you.
Yeah.
Oh, those gym ones are everything.
Yeah,
The weight rooms and the exercise rooms, there's a spin room and all of that. They are set to, make sure I say this correctly so that I do not lie to you. Where did I put them? Exterior main gym, note quarters, office. I just had it. Utility restroom. Yes. These are set to automatic 10 minutes. So auto on, auto off, 10-minute timeout. The exercise rooms.
I'll let people funnel through.
So yeah, crowd in here as easy as you can.
Not a huge, but
So this room is unique so far as there are 2 of the network NESIs, one for building G and then one for the rest of this larger building. This is where it lives in here. This is an ARP, the relay panels. Again, there are several of them scattered around. That's what they look like.
But this is one of 2 of just these.
This is one of 2 of just the NESIs. And this is the one for this main building. And then where Ryan is setting up to show you guys that more in-depth programming questions and bits and pieces, there's another one of these, and you can sort of get a visual look at it. There's also, this is that main switch, the hallway switch we were talking about, if you did want to turn it on and off.
Okay. Or reprogram or...
Let's say that again?
Reprogram it if we need to. Or...
It can get turned into many different things if you wish it to, yeah.
So
I'm not
if you
sure
come
what
in-
that
if
question
you
is.
come in here with a computer and like plug in, this would be the end of the line, you could plug in, actually.
No, this,
part of that.
yeah. This, the network,
Oh, this is on the network, that's right.
the network controls all of the halls and those sort of common areas, and this switch is tied into those,
Okay, you can only do that on the individual.
the individual ones. The other thing that's kind of useful to look at is this guy. This is right off the bat. This says there are 384 online devices and 0 offline devices. That's kind of useful to know, because if there's not 0 offline devices, then there's some, you might need to take a look at something. So this is a great little troubleshooting device, and it's worth getting deep into. If Ryan doesn't go into it as part of his spiel, it's definitely worth asking him about.
And I'm assuming there's like technical support we can call. And
Absolutely, yeah. There's SensorView has a pile of it. There's a bunch of phone numbers.
If there was one that said offline device and as a troubleshoot, would you be able to tell where that device is from here?
It's hard. That is a little bit more difficult, because this can't necessarily. This will tell you which. There are no offline devices. No, if there's an offline device, it'll tell you what it used to be, meaning it'll give you a number. It'll get you what we called it, so it might say Hall aux sensor.
Gotcha. At least
or Hall 1E aux sensor. So you'll be able to narrow it down. They each have an individual number associated with them. Every single device does, but you may or may not. You kind of have to get into the plans to figure out which device that number is attached to. It doesn't say, yeah, I'm the third one around the corner next to the, kitchen. It doesn't have that level of granularity.
It's not addressable. So you can't look up where it is in your system.
It has a number. You can look it up. You can look it up in the books, but you have to sort of get into the plans in order to be able to find. This is not going to say.
Like a fire system, where a fire system will tell you.
No, it doesn't.
It's on this device.
It'll tell you there's a device that is having trouble. It'll give you some notion of which device it is, but you might have to get a little deeper to be like, oh, it's the third one in Halsey. I mean, that is the part that it won't give you. Any other questions about this room? Excellent.
Is there a password on that? I didn't catch the beginning.
There is. If you need to get into it, come on. 1, 2, 3, 4, and that gets into where, again, you can sort of get into the devices and profiles and such that are happening.
Can you change settings from there? Can you change something from there?
It's more of a display. Okay. It's more of a troubleshooting device. Like I said, if Ryan doesn't get into it, I don't want to go too deep into something that he's planning on covering again. If he doesn't cover it, then you should absolutely ask him about that.
So if everybody feels great about this portion, do you feel good about this, Jason?
If these guys do, I do.
Let's go now back to the art room where we were at, and this is where you guys can ask them all the juicy questions.
I'm trying to get a remote set up so that I can see his computer, so you guys can see the network portion of it, because we don't have access to it up here because the hotspot doesn't reach up here, but the room's too small for you guys to all be in, so we're trying to do a little remote. So I'm going to start with parts and pieces, then I'll talk about programming a local zone, and then hopefully by that time Jason will have a session started, and we can talk about the NESI and how to program in the network. So, cool? Awesome. And if you guys decide it's break time, just tell me, and we'll take a 15, 10, whatever. Not everyone can stay awake for my portion of it. So, before I get started, were there questions that I need to know that weren't answered during the tour about sequence of operations and where buttons are and where devices are? You got all that? Okay, excellent. All right, so I'm going to start here. I'm going to start by giving out, because everyone loves literature, right? I actually have enough of these bad boys. You can hold on to them or give them back to me at the end. It doesn't matter to me. This is Nlight Pocket Guide. It's kind of like, Nlight for Dummies book. Well, you know, it's not the deep dive. Let's just put it that way. So basically, I'll get on camera again. Basically, in the front, this section here gives you all the vocabulary that we're going to talk about. So as I go through something, I'll try to define it. If you guys are like, what the heck does that mean? Just look back here and you'll probably find the answer. This first section down here is out of the box. It just works. We've already talked about that. Every one of our devices works out of the box on channel 1, and they all kind of connect together. So you can take a switch, right? Plug a Cat5 cable into it. You can take a power pack, right? Plug that in, and you can turn it on, and you can turn it off, and you can dim it up and down right out of the box. Right. If you wanted to add occupancy control, you can plug it in, and it will automatically work out of the box. Right. And it all works on default settings. Right. So channel 1, 10-minute timeout is default, and auto. So they will always turn on and off. So let's say that you guys forgot how to program, which this is the beginning of me telling you how to program, so we'll get there. You guys forgot how to program, and you have lights off and you just need to get them on. If you just go grab a power pack, put it in, it will work on channel 1. It will turn on. It may not turn on with the switch you want it to, but it will turn on. So that's pretty simple. There are power consumption requirements on the devices, right? So as it's installed right now, so the power consumption really only matters when you have a ton of devices on the same local zone, and we'll talk about a local zone here in a second. But hallways, long spaces, right? In a classroom, you're not going to run out of power. And what I mean by power is bus power, right? The power to power up these devices, right? The power to power up the switch, or the power to power up the aux sensor. The normal power pack supplies that power on the bus. And there are specific power consumption requirements, and they're all listed there. You don't have to worry about it unless you're in a hallway. And so what I mean by that is, if you rearrange stuff in the hallway, you may lose power. If all of a sudden you lose devices online because you moved a power pack because you wanted it in a more accessible location, or you replaced it and just kind of changed the way that the daisy chain ran and the system stopped working, it's probably because the power pack's in the wrong position, right? Because the power pack supplies 40 milliamps on either side of the network jack, and so between that and the next power pack you have 40 milliamps, and then on the next segment between that power pack and the next power pack you have 40 milliamps. So basically you can add in as many devices as you want, and they range from 3 milliamps to 5 milliamps. There's one device that takes 8. These guys take 8 milliamps. Basically, you want to make sure that you're not going over that 40 milliamps. You're not really going to have to worry about it as maintenance, right? Because you're going to take a piece out, you're going to put a piece back in. But if you rearrange something and it stops working, it's probably a power issue if it's in the hallway. So that's what I'm getting at. That's the bottom line. Let's see here. All right, local zone, right? So we'll start with this simplest of things. We're in a local zone. It's not connected to a network at all. A local zone consists of, and there's an icon there, basically the stuff to make the zone work. It could be a switch and a power pack. It could be a switch, power pack, and an aux sensor. It could just be a power pack and an aux sensor. You know, this is a local zone. So between this device, this Cat5 cable, in and out of this device to this device, right?
So like the batteries would be one without a switch.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, because those don't, and it's a local zone. Yep, that is correct, because the bathrooms are independent of the network. Local zones, like I say, work on channel 1 out of the box, et cetera, et cetera. If there's a problem with the system, the LEDs tell you things, right? These are the blink codes. I'm not going to go through them all because you're only going to need them when you're troubleshooting, and you're not going to remember by the time that things break down in 5 years. So the one blink code I am going to tell you is a rapid flash followed by 2 blinks. So it'll go blink, 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 blink. And I can actually mimic that. Hopefully you guys can see it. So you see this LED down there? If I unplug this, and I unplug this, I have to let the capacitor die. Okay, there we go. And then I plug in the system. Oh, Discover. Man, this is a solid network. So normally when you plug it in, you have to wait longer for the system to forget that this was here. These guys would go blink, blink. That is what we call discovery. And discovery, I can show you when I show you how to connect, because I can force a discovery. Discovery is like saying, hey, who's out there? Who's out there? Sort of, but it's connected. It's more like a fire alarm system where you connect the stuff together and it polls. You know, when it polls, that's what we call discovery. It's a poll state. Hey, who's out there? Responder 1, responder 2, responder 3, and then when people stop responding, it goes, oh, this is everyone. That's great. You know. It will continue to do that. It will continue to do that until the last response, and then the discovery mode will stop until the zone changes in some way. Yeah, exactly. What you don't want to see is the system in discovery all the time.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Then you have a problem. Most of the time when that happens after I leave, it's not generally a device. It's because somebody hit a Cat5 cable somewhere. Like someone came in, they put a screw through a wall and it hit and went through a Cat5 cable. They crunched. My favorite was there was a fire guy that dropped his fire pipe on top of the HVAC vent when they were fixing something in a building. They were doing a punch list item or whatever, and those ridges on the vent smushed the cable and damaged the cable, and it took us like a month to find it. You know, it's like, what happened here? Because I wasn't thinking, like when I was a new tech, I wasn't thinking to look for cable after I installed something. It should just work. So I always ask now, so what work has been done in this area? And I go check there first if it's in discovery. Because 9 times out of 10, it's a wire or connection problem.
So is there a way to like, plug your computer into a local zone? And
yep, we're getting there. Yep.
So that you can kind of figure out where the break is.
Yep. Yeah. As soon as we're done getting through the Pocket Guide, I'll show you how to commission. So, so that's discovery. That's the one blink code I want to tell you about. On the next page, this is an example of a network system. They're all very similar to one another, and we call it the backbone, right? So this would be for like your hallways and things like that. A network system consists of a NESI, which I believe you guys saw. I'm not sure. It looks like this. It's in a white cabinet. It says Acuity on the front. You take it off. This is what's inside. There's a power supply up here. Receives line voltage, changes it to DC, goes into this guy right here. This is the computer right here, and then this is the Nlight sidecar. It's very, very much like a HVAC controller because it's made by an HVAC controller company. It's made by Distech. And then we flash it with our memory. So it's very robust, and the reason that we did that is because everything is BTL listed, so for BACnet and all that sort of stuff. There's a way to access the controller, which we'll talk about later. There's a local hotspot. You guys can connect your building network into it through here, and then the top 2 here is the Nlight portion out to the lighting network. So you plug in up here, you go to what we call a bridge hub, which connects multiple bridges, back to the NESI, right? And then you have bridges, and then bridges connect. You notice that they're the same. They're literally the same thing. The only thing that's different about it is that a hub connects other bridges and a bridge connects local zones, right? So each one of these can be connected to a local zone, which we already created over here. right? So you can just come off the end of this guy and come over here and connect into it. And that creates your network system. Does the connection make sense? How you get from a local zone back to a network?
My question is more geared to once we come off that's called bridge, right?
Yes.
The hub at the bridge that goes out to the zone. When it clicks into that zone, can you show us that connection there? Because you got a three-way connector there, right?
Yeah. So.
Have to connect at that point. Right?
No, it can connect to this point. To an open end. So the most important thing about this that I mentioned way back, and I should have reiterated, is that everything has to be in a straight line. Everything has to be in a straight line. It's a serial connection. It's RS-485, exactly like a fire alarm system, right? The backbone of it is the same type of backbone as a fire alarm system or DMX control, which we'll talk about in the theater tomorrow. And in order for that to work, devices have to be in a daisy chain. They cannot Y or split or any of that stuff. And then you're going to ask this question because you brought it up. And you're like, but there's a splitter right here. This is what we call a trunk connection. There is one device connected to it, and it's here because this has to get through a ceiling tile. Trunk connections have to be less than 24 inches, 18 to 24 inches, right? And you cannot have another device off of it. As soon as you put another device off of it, you've created a Y, right? This is still technically a daisy chain.
I didn't quite catch that. Could you please repeat it?
Siri's trying to teach us today.
I'm listening.
Shh, I don't want you to. Not sure what that was about. So if we look at, so you notice that in this drawing that it shows like in and out, in and out, in and out. This is technically the in and out for this device.
So it goes to another device.
Yes, exactly. It can go to another device. Like I can literally plug into here and I can grab another power pack and I can plug into here.
Why would you need another power pack?
And then you keep going. It depends on how your space is wired, right? So, you may have, every electrician is different how they install things. This electrician put all the power packs in one location. Some people will literally just run a power conduit down, and then like in here, this run here, they'll put the power packs here and put one power pack here and one power pack here. So you could go from here to there to a power pack to another aux sensor or to another switch, right? The order does not matter. Does that make sense?
Is there a number of devices per power pack that you have to start?
That is the power consumption requirement. In a small zone like this, you're not going to have a problem, right? Yeah, you can put as many normal power packs on a system that you want, right? But power consumption devices like this, switches, occupancy sensors, photocells, which I don't have an example of, but there's one right there. Those are all power consuming devices. Those are the ones that are limiting that you have to pay attention to the power consumption. My general rule of thumb, no more than 9 or 10 between power packs, and that's a substantial number. I mean, you know, most of your rooms are, like 90% of your rooms are not going to have that. The only rooms that are going to be beyond that are common spaces or hallways, or if you've connected multiple rooms together, that type of thing. So to be honest, like when I'm, sometimes I get pulled into the office and I have to engineer these guys. I don't actually pay attention to those power consumption requirements until I hit 9 devices. So I'm just like, just keep on going. And I rarely have to actually stop on a job and actually do the math, because I rarely hit that in a local zone.
You just need to know for like troubleshooting about how many devices are going to be plugged into the power pack.
Yeah. So like I said right at the beginning, if you look at the submittals, you know, and it's wired the way that it's wired, like right now, everything's engineered to work. If things change off of that, then that's a problem. Right, so like let's say that a device went down. There's no blinky light on these guys, right? There's no green blinky light. Go to the power pack on either side and see if that's dead.
And is there like an LED light on there that you can just like push a button and see if it lights up?
So there are LED lights right here. They should be dark under normal circumstance, but if you unplug and replug, it should start blinking and go in discovery. Or you can turn the circuit off and turn the circuit back on, and that should pop the LED on and tell you it's working. So
And you'll tell us how to get out of discovery for discovery.
yeah, that should be all automatic. If you're stuck, if you're stuck in discovery, you have a wiring problem, or you had like a power surge and it fried a controller somewhere on the zone.
Okay, so we'd have to unplug it, plug a new one in, and see if it's a wiring, to figure out if it's a wiring issue or if it's a relay.
Yeah. 9, and I'll show you as soon as we get into the sensor view. Once you log in, you'll be like, oh, I got to replace this power pack, type of thing. So, all right. So we talked about power producing devices. Power consuming devices, right? Are the switches, aux sensors, and photocells. If you have a red power pack, right? If you have a red power pack of any sort, that does not produce bus power. That is an emergency device, right? It does not consume power, but it does not put bus power on a device. And that's purely for Nlight enabled fixtures. You guys don't have any, so I'm not going to get into why that is. But just know that if it's red, it doesn't produce power. If it's blue, it doesn't produce power. It has to be white, or a normal power pack. Basically, it has to look like this in order to produce power. If it looks red, like this with fins on it, or blue, it doesn't produce power.
And what would the function of those be then?
These are different types of power packs, right? So we have different flavors, right? So the most basic power pack that we have is the NPP16, 16 amps of relay, and you have your switch leg on your blue. On the front here is a listing of what color and what it does, so that you know how to wire it, type of thing. And this is purely just a relay switch on and off. And I'll just pass the stuff around as I get done. Yep.
Power packs don't produce power.
Right.
So power pack, the main power pack is kind of confusing. It's more like interface.
I'll get there as soon as I tell you what they actually do. It'll make sense. Trust me. I am answering your question. NPP16D is dimming, right? So it still has the NPP16 relay, right? So it's got the switch leg in it, but it also has blue and gray 0 to 10 volt dimming, right? So still a standard power pack. It does produce power. This one with the fins on it, right, is a specialty power pack. It is a NSP5 PCD ELV 120. It is a phase dim power pack. We have like 6 different flavors of phase dim power packs. I think you only have like 3 in the building. So you're not going to run across, most of the time it's like trophy cases or like tape. Oh no, you guys have a lot more. All of your tape light is probably on something like this, depending on how it's wired. It's phase dim. It's like a rheostat in your wall, like the old kitchen rheostat. You're literally taking 120 volts and bringing it down to 60 volts, right? Whereas 0 to 10, it's 120 all the time, but you're syncing control via a low voltage 0 to 10 signal, right? This is literally changing the power in the sine wave, right? Because it's changing the sine wave, it cannot produce power on the bus. Right? That's why this doesn't produce power, because it's literally changing the sine wave. It doesn't stay 120 volts all the time. That's why it doesn't produce bus power. Make sense? Okay. The red ones, which I conveniently don't have, are all the same flavors, right? You'll have an NPP16D ER. You'll have an NPP16 ER. You'll have all these ER power packs with different flavors. It's the exact same thing, except it's an emergency shunt device. Upon loss of normal power, it will shunt close and the lights will turn on. So it bypasses control. That's the only difference.
And that's probably you have the fire and the security hookup too?
That's a little bit different. That's actually connected to here. We'll get that when we hit the network zone. The blue power packs, I believe, was all removed from this school, but I know some of your other schools actually have this. Because I've done a couple of your quotes for the other schools. This guy is a plug load device. It's an NPP20PL, plug load 20 amps, right? This is a energy code device, right? It plugs in so that you have a switch on the wall that's labeled controlled. If you have ever seen a plug on the wall labeled control, that's this guy right here. It just turns the circuit on, turns the circuit off with the occupancy sensor, and it doesn't produce bus power. So, because it's not a normal power pack.
It's just a relay through the system to turn it on.
Yep.
So if you had a lamp in the room plugged in there, you turn the light on at the same time, you turn anything else off.
Yeah, technically we don't wire it up to the manual control switch. It's just connected to the occupancy sensor because Title 24 in WSIC, Washington State Energy, WSIC, that is, the code says that 50% of all outlets in a space have to be plug load controlled based off of occupancy in the space. It's the only reason we put them in. So, but sometimes energy managers like them all over the place because, you know, monitors have something called a quintessent load. This is way more information than you want. You guys can tell me to stop, but has a quintessent load. It's like that VCR that always has power on, right? It's always drawing power, and so across the school district, if every teacher left their monitor plugged in, right, it's drawing power 24/7, 7 days a week, like all year long. But if the monitor was connected to sensors, it would shut off when no one was in the space. If you do have a controlled outlet in one of your other schools, this is the only reason I'm bringing it up because I know you guys have it in other places. If you do, be sure that the computer is plugged into the uncontrolled outlet and the monitors are plugged into the controlled outlet. Your IT department will hate you otherwise. So that's basically the devices.
So is this all proprietary? Like we can only use this brand for these? There's no like interchangeable parts?
It depends on, to work with its buddy, yes, it's proprietary to work with this buddy. To work with fixtures, like if you decide to like change out this switch, let's say you had a small zone like a closet that is literally this switch and this guy. This control to the light fixtures is not proprietary. It's a standard 0 to 10 phase dimming, like the load side control of things. Yeah, it's just a relay. So the system is proprietary because it's digital. It doesn't, I don't care what digital control system you have, it's always proprietary. If you have a networked system, so like your hallways and things like that, you can use BACnet to control and or monitor things, which is, you know, obviously not proprietary, but you're controlling a proprietary control system. Just okay, it's like layers upon layers of control. So.
This stuff is pretty easy to get. We don't have to buy it through you. We can get it at Platt.
Yeah, Platt, Gray Bar, CED, the list goes on. So. Yeah, if you tell me a distributor that you really like, I can tell you whether to sell it. I know that Platt and Gray Bar stock it on the shelves. CED, for the most part, has stuff lying around, but they don't do a huge stock, you know. North Coast, yes. They're a big supplier. Rexel doesn't matter anymore because they merged. So, but yeah. So those are kind of the parts and pieces. Now getting into the system, starting on a local zone. Sorry, I'm just making sure that Jason is doing good downstairs. You need something called an NCOM kit. An NCOM kit consists of cable, these two wiring devices. Vic has the product to turn over to you guys. He probably sitting on his desk, but it's basically a USB cable USB cable that plugs into the adapters, that plugs into the serial connection, right? So this is a USB adapter to serial connection to Cat5, right? So this signal is not a network signal, it is a serial signal, right? There's a transmit pair, a receive pair, and a power pair. There is a power pair. You cannot take this and plug it into your computer's network port. You will fry it. Yes, it has to go to the USB port. So that is the biggest gotcha out of this whole thing.
And that comes with, can we buy that, or do we have to get that?
Yeah, you can buy it. You can buy it. I actually recommend that you don't buy this. I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you how, because this is what you have, right? But I actually recommend it. You guys may want to write this down. The part number is NIO-BT. That's a Neo BT or Nlight input-output Bluetooth. It is a device. It's a little gray device that you can plug into there and use your phone, and it's like 3,000 times easier to deal with. So, but that's not what you have on the job, so I'm not training on it. NIO-BT Bluetooth. BT is really easy, and you use an app called nconfig, and it works with Android and Apple phones. So for the zones that you have for like classroom spaces and all of your independent zones, those are way easier to deal with, and you'll see why here in a minute. So looks like my computer went to sleep because I drolled on for too long. Sorry about that. All right, so now we're going to talk about controlling your independent zone, right? So this is a standalone local zone, not connected to the network. You want to find the end of line, connect into it, take it off the wall. I'm cheating here. If you guys are looking and going to call me out, I'm using a splitter. This does have effects. I do not recommend doing it. It works sometimes. It doesn't work all the times. We use a splitter when we need to be close to a monitor or someplace or whatever. It doesn't always work. You want to find the end of line, which is probably that switch back there, or one of these aux sensors. There's always a device in the ceiling and a device on the wall. That's the end of line. So.
And you're using a splitter because otherwise this would be all the way around. You would have a complete loop right there, right?
Yeah.
You had to just cut into it by using.
Yeah. So this particular zone was actually set up like this. Oh, come on, get in there. It was set up like that. So it's just going daisy chaining through, but because I needed to get to the projector, I needed to splice in. And again, we don't recommend this. Don't fix things by putting splitters into things. Not good for operation. We can, you know, look at the computer sometimes with it, but not good for operation. Yeah, you're putting a Y in the system. This is much longer than 24 inches. So, all right. So that's on the screen. On your guys' training agenda, there is underneath the Nlight section, there is a link. It's a very long link, but it is a link directly to the download site for SensorView, which is the program that we use to adjust the program of all these devices. Okay, so feel free to download it, put it on your computer. When you download it and put it in the computer, when you download it to your computer, you're going to get a program called, where's my mouse? There it is.
Does the software work on tablets?
It works on any PC-based program. So depending on your tablet, if it's an Android tablet, no. If it's a Apple tablet, no. But if it's a like what are those maybe, but the Surface, that's what yes, it will work on a Surface type of thing. If you want to use a tablet, get the Neo BT. That will work with tablets. It was, yeah. It's also easier to deal with. You plug in and it works. So now, when you download the software, and actually let me go to this link because I'm connected to the network. You are going to get, am I connected to the network? Yes. So the network's not happy, it's not reaching out to the outside world. If I was reaching out to the outside world, it would bring up the download. You click download and you would download the program. It will bring something called the commissioning tool. I put my commissioning tool on my toolbar. It's going to say, you know, would you like this to make changes? You're going to say yes. And you're going to get this little screen like this. All that this is a little tool to force discovery on your system, so that you can poll to see how many devices are on a local zone. This only applies when you're using an NCOM kit connected to a local zone. It does not apply to a network. Networks, you just log in and everything's there because the device that polls is always connected. Right?
It's like pulling a small.
Yeah. Exactly. So when you're doing a classroom, and I'm starting with the local zone because it makes everything else easier. So before you launch SensorView, you have to hit start to start discovering, and you want to make sure it says NCOM kit, and whatever port it's on. It'll be COM2, COM3, whatever your computer assigned to it, right? And it's going to throw things into discovery, and it's going to start counting up devices. When it's in discovery, we should be able to see the blink host. You see the rapid flash and the dual blink? That's discovery. This is appropriate at the moment because I forced it into a discovery mode by using the commissioning tool.
So do the sensors do the same?
Yes, those are much harder to see because the little light is like way up there, and this is an up light, so it kind of like shines on the sensor, but it's there. Yeah, you kind of have to like go, oh yeah, or turn the lights off in the room. And so as it connects, I know it's really small for you guys, but this is counting 6, 7. You know, I believe that there's 11 devices in this space. And there's 8. When it's done discovering, this will say ready, right? And you can see I'm just buying time. This is the longest part of the process right here. This is why network systems are much easier to deal with than.
This room has 11 devices. Why would this room have so many devices?
Well, we can count them, right? So each switch is a device, right? So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, right? You have 2 occupancy sensors, 4, 5, 6, 7 for the daylight, 7, and then you have 7, 8, 9 for the power packs. And this room is over 1,000 square feet, so there's probably 2 emergency power packs as well, 7, 9, 10, 11. So.
And those emergency power packs are red, right?
Yes.
And then they just act as a relay to turn on and off?
Yes. Yeah, it has the added it programs the same way as a normal, it acts the same way as a normal, except it has the added function that it has a normal, it has a neutral and a hot for normal power sense, right? And when the power goes off on the normal, it shunts the device closed and bypasses the control of the system.
Like a 3-way switch, it's toggling from one to the other.
Yeah, it's a UL 924 device. If you ever used them, like a BTL, ALCR, let's find some others I can name, IOTA, none of them that you've used. So you know how you used to have night lights in a building, and then people are like, I hate the fact I can't turn off the night light. I need something to follow the switch on the wall that turns off that night light, but in the case of emergency, it shunts closed and turns the night light back on. That's the same thing that this is. It's just the digital version of it. So nowadays, all emergency devices need a UL 924 listed device on it, and or a 1008 device. A 1008 device is an automatic switch control, right? So you're switching buses between a normal bus and an emergency bus. Generally, generator systems have that transfer switch. Yeah, those are 1008 devices. So, perfect. All right, so looks like we're ready. So there's two ways to do it. I can click on Launch Sensor View here, which I'm going to do, and it will load into your default browser, whether it's Explorer, I'm using Chrome, whatever. It works on all of them. I like Chrome. It seems to work faster. That's the only reason I use it. The password to get in is actually on your guys's. You guys have 3 sheets. You have one with a bunch of numbers on it. I passed out that one right there. So this one right here, we're going to ignore all this stuff at the top for now. And on the back it says Sensor View, and the password is administrator admin right there. This information is on every single one of our field service reports, and there's like 12 of them for this job because it was phased. Every one of them has this information, and you should get it through your O&Ms, and you have it here so you can copy, take a photo, share it, whatever you want to do.
So administrator's username and password's admin?
Yep, exactly. I gotta remember, I gotta bring donuts or something, especially with a group this big. Right? Yeah. As soon as I start talking, everyone's like, I just want to know the thing at the end. All right, so if we click on Login, you're going to get to the overview page. Overview page is here. I am not going to teach you everything about Sensor View. I'm going to teach you what you need to know to adjust things, right? You can ask questions. I'll say if it's a rabbit hole or not, and you can tell me whether to continue or not. So here, you can pretty much ignore this when you are connected to a local zone. This is a network thing. It's saying that there are 81 offline devices. That's because there's 81 devices that would be connected to this building if I was connected to the Sensor View program downstairs. Right? But I'm not connected. I'm connected here. So that's why you're seeing this. Admin, I'm just going to go here real quick to show you something. Gateways. Gateways are connection points, right? So you can see that that my database, and I'll talk about a database here in a second, has building G on it and has building A, B, C, D, and E. G is downstairs in that room that we were in the back corner of the electrical room. A, B, C, D, E is that last thing that you guys saw on the way out. That's that Nessie over there. For what we're doing in a local zone, and this is the commissioning tool, right? Because this is the commissioning tool. It's technically a gateway. So that's why you're seeing things offline, is because there are active gateways that aren't online right now. So, all right. So ignoring all that, over here, this is the device tab, right? This is how you can see all of your devices, right? Over here on the left-hand side, you can see all the devices. Gray means that it's offline, and you get this nice little warning: this device cannot be contacted, and seems to have had a setting change. Wow, that's very passive. Please ensure the device is plugged in, synchronized, or ignore the change, or you can remove it. I would avoid removing it unless you're removing the device from the system, because it's removing it from the database. The commissioning tool, give me 1 second here. Council. Jason's downstairs trying to create a remote session for us. So I'm going to log in, and while it's logging in, I'll go back and continue talking. So commissioning tool, it is dark black, which means it's online. You can click on it, and it gives you general information. Nothing there is useful. But if you click on the arrow, it works like, the old school HVAC systems where everything's in tree format. You got a parent device, and then you got a sub device. You have a JACE, or you guys aren't HVAC techs, but trying to think of something that you guys wouldn't.
Ladder logic kind of thing?
Yeah, like ladder logic, right? And if you think about it, this is how everything's connected, right? I have a commissioning tool right here that's connected to one port, right? This is one port. These are 8 ports, right? So a commissioning tool has 1 port, and all of these devices are connected off of this port. If I look at a network system, I can see a bridge, right? And I can see that port 5 has these devices on it, and then port 6 have these devices on it, et cetera, et cetera. You can see how things are plugged in by the ladder logic. Yes, this is a port. Each one of these is a port.
But that would be considered parallel. Ports, right?
Okay, so serial RS-485 connection dictates that you have to have everything daisy chained, right? And so that holds true for local zones. When it comes to networks, these are what we call optosplitters, right? DMX uses similar things. I forget what they're called in the fire alarm world because I'm not that dude. But basically, each one of these ports breaks the copper connection and translates it into a digital light, and then goes to the next port, transmits into a digital light back into a copper, right? So each local zone is one straight line of copper. And then in order to get around the splitting or the wiring, each one of these is optically isolated, so we're breaking the copper connection and starting a new one each time.
Okay, so but there's no power derived from that bridge?
The bridge has its own power supply. Thanks for the question.
So that'd be like 4 different power supplies to figure how many hubs you got coming out of there, right?
It's like so each one of these ports one port can come to this classroom, one port can go to that classroom, one port can go to that classroom, one port can go to the other classroom, right? And each of the classrooms work independently of each other, right? Because it's a local zone, right? And all that this does is bring communication back to one point of access, which is the NESI, to allow us to control things. So there's a little glimpse into our future here. So anyways, so if I limit myself to fantastic, great, good job, Jason, thank you. So if I'm looking at a commissioning tool, right, I can click on a device and I can see basic information on it, right? The way that our labeling, let's see if I can zoom, oh good, I can zoom in. So our labeling scheme is very consistent. We don't tend to label local zones because you're standing in the zone. You don't have to know, you're not going to control something in another space, right? We do identify switch legs. Right? Switch leg A, switch leg B, you know, that type of thing. You can grab a power pack, and let's zoom back out. Oh dear, go the right way. You can zoom back out, and you can go to device overview, and you can turn that device off. Just did, right? And you can turn that device on, so that you can identify it and figure out what it's controlling, right?
That's cool.
You can take a look at its current settings, the settings of the device here, or the default settings. The difference between current and default settings, this will get you every time. Current settings is the current state of the device, and the default settings is what it defaults to, right? And it's not factory defaults, it's what you program it to. So if you're reprogramming a device, you want to change it in the default settings. You want to change it in the default settings, otherwise it won't hold. It'll consider it a temporary setting, right? Because you're just changing the current setting. You're not changing the default behavior. It's the default behavior that you program. Yep. And that gets people every time. These power packs are pretty simple. These are not dimming power packs, so there's not a lot of options in them, which is fine. The override option is normal. If you have automatic functions like occupancy sensors or photocells, you want the system in normal because it's going to respond to that. If you change the default setting to override on, it's going to be manual and will only respond to a switch. It won't respond to a power pack because you're overriding its function. Make sense? Cool. There's no reason to. I'm just explaining what the override actually means because lots of people change it.
So if you change that to override off, you can disable the switches like in that cafeteria thing?
You cannot disable the switch. You only disable the occupancy sensors, right? And you change the default behavior, right? Let's say that the system was on, you had the switch on, and then you power cycled the circuit. It would come back in its default state, which would be off. And then you have to hit the switch to turn it back on.
How would we get rid of that switch then?
I will get to that.
Also, before we move on, if we do, because a lot of us have tablets,
Mhm.
we would have to download the app and then that Bluetooth thing, and we could do this from our tablets potentially?
Yes. Yeah, and it's a lot easier through the app. And
But then, so how do you do for local? How would you still get into?
I'll show you. I'll show you. Once I get done with this, the other one takes 5 minutes, and I'll take that 5 minutes for you. So.
If there was a dimming control, that's where you would do it to 50%.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And I'll show you on the network side what a dimming one looks like. So, special operating mode, right? Special operating mode is where we determine whether things are vacancy or occupancy, right? So, and if you notice, that setting is actually in the power pack and not the occupancy sensor, right? Because you're telling the power pack how to behave to an occupancy state, right? So you can have one power pack be a manual on and another power pack in the same space be an auto on, because that setting is in the power pack. 90% of all your settings are in power packs.
So if you have two different functions in one room, it's going to have separate power packs. That are
Yes. Exactly. Exactly. So you guys are going to hate the language that is in SensorView, which is why I'm like NeoBT is the way to go, because it speaks electrician. SensorView is like some nerd that thought the word meant something to him, but not the industry, right? So semi-auto means manual on, auto off, right? When I was first learning it, I couldn't remember it. However, if you hover over it, down here, it says semi-auto requires the occupant to manually turn the lights on while having them turn off automatically. So if you don't know what you're looking for, you can hover over the option and it will tell you what effect it will have on the space. You don't have to look it up in the manual. In fact, this is how I learned how to program when I started years ago. I was just like, I don't know what this does. Oh, that seems about right. And then you go and test it and it worked. So that's literally how I did it. Because, you can't remember everything in a 4-hour session or whatever. And that's why I don't go over everything. Things that we change in the system is what I'm going to show you, right? We changed the special operating mode from normal, which is auto on, auto off, to semi-automatic, which is manual on, auto off, right? Switch tracking. So you asked the question, how do I turn the switch off so that it doesn't respond to somebody hitting it on or hitting it off, right? There's a couple different ways. You can go over here to tracking and tell it to stop following the switch. I can click that. In fact, I'll change it right now. This is one of these switches. I don't remember which one. But if I turn it on and off, off. Which one did I save it?
You didn't save and apply.
What's that?
You didn't save and apply.
Oh, I didn't save and apply. Thank you. I just saved defaults. Okay, good. Thank you, sir. There are two different save buttons. One's save defaults and one's save defaults and apply. SensorView is a database program. Saving defaults saves it to the database on your computer. It does not apply it to the individual computers that are out here. Remember how I said that the programming resides on each device out in the field? When you connect, you aren't connected to each device because it's a serial connection. You're literally making programming adjustmts and then pushing it out to the devices, right? So your computer is a database. And this is actually a really important thing to talk about because if you went out with your sensor view program, and you went out with your sensor view program, and you guys went to the same space to do 2 different tasks, and you were there first, and you came along second, you can inadvertently undo what she did.
How inadvertently? Because if I go to the ball and then load it up?
You have to synchronize first.
So we need to just use one computer.
Yes.
We don't need to be downloading this.
Yeah, and I'm actually surprised, like, originally the school was a fully networked system, which is easier because you can put the sensor view on a server, and then that's the only thing, and you can be anywhere in your district, and you can remote into that server, and then you have access to all that information, right?
Can we add that after to the stuff that's existing?
That would be a substantial cost in this building because you would have to add bridges and wire. The system is 100% capable of it because the system was originally designed to be networked, and somebody goes, hey, that's a little expensive, so they V'd down and they got rid of all that labor to put in all the bridges and all that sort of stuff. There are other schools in your district. I'm trying to remember the one out on like 82nd. There's a, which one? Franklin. Franklin is 100% networked, if I remember right. So, but I didn't start that up, so I don't know if there's a server out there for you guys on that or not. But if it is, like, you can take any space that has a NESI and is connected to your building network, you can pull back to the same sensor view database. You know, and it's just working with IT to download sensor view and put it on this server and then give you access. So, but we'll get there. So, so tracking is the way, and I think I saved and applied. Let's go. I think this is A. Nope. Why is it tracking? That's weird. Let's grab this other one. Oh, it may be. I may be having a hard time pushing to the device. That's a good point. Default settings. Let's make sure that. Yeah, it's not reverting to the defaults. So I can take the switch and I can apply the setting. Yeah, it's because I'm in a splitter. I'm having a hard time communicating with it. So that's one of the problems of using a splitter. Don't use them. So basically you just undo that, hit save, and it'll be done. And as long as the current setting is to have the switch done, it's all good. We'll revert back to defaults. Sorry, I'm just making sure it all goes back to normal. Add it back in. So there's that. Then, okay, so this is a power pack that is dimming, right? So these have all the dimming options, and it's following the photocell, right? So like I said before, the easy way to turn off a photocell if you're having problems with it or you don't need it anymore is to unplug it, right? Plug it back in when you need it. If you need to change the setting of it digitally, like on the networked ones, like out in your commons or whatever, you can actually, under photocell follow mode, you can just hit disabled, save and apply, and you're done, right? And you can hover over it to see what it is down at the bottom. You can set, we didn't change any of those. Your idle time until dim. So like this space, the occupancy sensor, if I clicked on it, the occupancy time delay is 15 minutes. And then on the power, that means after 15 minutes it turns off. But there's a warning built in, so at 7.5 minutes the lights go down to 1%. If it doesn't sense motion within 7.5 minutes, to warn the room that it's going to shut off soon.
So it's down to 1%?
Yes, and the reason I know that is what's that?
That's pretty dim.
Sometimes. These are like dim. Well, they're like dim to like 5% or 10%. It depends on the building. At night, you're not gonna. You're gonna have more than 1 foot candle in the space. You're gonna be able to see, type of thing. So you can change that by adjusting the unoccupied dim level like this. Yes, we did change this. So there's also a setting that we changed called wall pod dimming adjustments. Every power pack has one. In photocell zones, they are all set to temporary. What that means is this zone doesn't apply because there isn't a dimming switch. But if you're like in another space that has a dimming switch and you dim down to like 50%, you shut off and you turn it back on, the lights will come back on to its occupied bright level, which is set to 100% right here. If it was set to permanent, if this was set to permanent, which is its default setting, you would dim down to 50%, turn off, turn back on, and it'll come to 50%. Right? So you may discover that you have some spaces, you'll be like, why does this come back onto full, and then this other space only comes back onto 50%? It's because when we do daylighting, we don't want the daylight to permanently dim the daylight zone, right? Yeah, we want everything, and we want the behavior to be consistent among the whole zone, so we just turn the whole zone to temporary. But a lot of office spaces, right, like the principal's office or whatever, they like permanent dimming because they like their setting to always come back onto this bright level. So as long as it doesn't have daylighting in it, we leave it as permanent for that reason. So, and then there's your semi-auto, there's your grace period, and blah, 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 blah. Along with the switch tracking, you can turn off the tracking. I forgot to mention this on the other one. You can also just do some special ones. You can tell it to ignore offs, which means that you can set the switch to always turn on if someone hits it, but it won't ever shut off. And that would be ignore offs. And right? So that's a cool little feature for like common spaces. Sure, we'll allow you to turn the lights on, but you won't turn it off. Yeah. And so we actually use that function a lot instead of the key switches because people lose keys or whatever, and we just set those zones to ignore offs during the school day, and no one can turn the lights off. They can only come in and turn the light on. So
smashed off buttons.
Yeah, you try to help the people out, but they find some way of diverting it. So that is how you change the settings in the devices. I'm not going to go in and do it, but just remember that the settings are specific to the device, right? So your power packs are going to respond independently. If you change one power pack, it doesn't change these other power packs. You got to change them all, right? You can use, I'm not going to teach you this, but you can use network management to force config changes. The problem is that it's literally just selecting devices like this and then selecting a setting. You can't see what it's already set to. So that's not an advanced control thing. Avoid it until you're used to the system. Avoid it. So stay in device settings and change things one at a time until you get comfortable. So, because you can, if you accidentally select everything in the system, like if you're on a network system, you can change the whole network. So, so the last thing on a local zone to kind of figure out is how do I tell this switch to turn on that power pack, and how do I tell that aux sensor to control both these power packs? That type of thing. That is done in channel control. Right, so we go to channel control. You have to select the port that you want to control, which in this case is the one port on the commissioning tool, right? And here it is a simple thing. You have broadcasting devices and tracking devices. Broadcasting devices are power-consuming devices, so you already know this. Broadcasting devices are switches, occupancy sensors, and photocells. They are broadcasting their state. Right? You hit the on button and it goes, hey, channel 1 is at full, channel 1 is at full, or channel 1 is rising, or channel 1 is lowering, or whatever. Or the occupancy sensor is like, occupancy channel 2 is occupied. Channel 1 is unoccupied. You know, they're just broadcasting their state. It's a broadcast command. Tracking devices are like power packs. Anything that have load control of some sort. Any one of those boxy things over there is a tracking device, right? So all that you have to do is go into broadcasting devices, select what broadcasting devices you want on channel 1, and then go to tracking devices and say, I want to track these 2 devices, right? And then you hit save, and you've created your association, right? So like if on channel 1, like if I'm like, you know what, I want A to turn everything on, you can just select the top level, and it turns it, and hit save, and it'll turn everything on and off.
Oh wow, moved everything up there. Gotcha.
Yep. So you can have different switches control the same tracking device. You cannot have switches in more than one channel though, right? So if I go down here and I go, oh, I also want this to be controlled by this switch, it's going to move that switch from here and put it down to here. Right? So literally this is what you see is what you get. It's just a table. If this column matches with this column on this channel, they're controlled by one another. Right? And it's controlled by channel 1. And if you want, you can name this fun channel. You know, I don't ever do that because no one ever cares, except for in 1 or 2 cases. So, and then of course that's my switches. I can also click on occupancy, right? And now when I click broadcasting, I only see the occupancy sensors. I don't see the switches, right? Because they're a different channel set. And then when I click on photocell, I only see the photocells, right? I only see the photocells. But on tracking, I always see all the tracking devices. Kind of makes sense? Okay. Yeah. So that's the basic like control. If you're troubleshooting, the thing that I would show you is that you can grab a device, you can click on status, and you can see what's going on. You can see that this room is occupied. You can see that the state is open, and you can see the reason why the state is open, right? You would think that if it's occupied, it should be on, but it's manually overridden, right? Because I turned the lights off over here, right? So you can see the state of your room and why your lights are on or why your lights are off just by going over to status. You select the power pack you want to take a look at, you go to status, and you can see the state, and you can see the reason why, right? The other thing is that there's this thing called tracked occupancy timer, right? This is the sum, or this is what it's seeing as occupied. It's kind of staying around 14 minutes because it's a 15-minute timeout and everyone's moving in here, right? So every time someone moves, it resets to 15, resets to 15, that type of thing. And actually, I think I glazed over this. If you want to change the timeout period, just go to the aux sensor, select your time, hit save. And I told you how to override the photocell. Oh, I did not tell you guys how to set the set point. So if you go to your photocell, there's this thing down here called set foot candles. If it is too dim, increase this number. If it is too dark, if it's too bright, decrease the number, right? Because this is what it's reading at the top, right? This is probably like 80 foot candles over here, right? But it's only reading 5 at the ceiling. So, daylighting is an art. You know, if you want to maintain daylighting, but you want to adjust the foot candles, right? You can literally just increase what it wants to read at the ceiling, and it's going to produce more engineered light levels down on the ground. So there is no one way to hit it exactly right. It is literally an art. So, yep.
So over in the Franklin Library, it's the same system.
Yes, it is.
Light harvesting, and I know they've complained that whenever it's daylight, it still gets too dim for people working and reading, even if they're next to the window.
Yeah, it's because that space was set to 30-foot candles, which is really, really dim for a library.
This is where you fix that.
Yes.
And I have a feeling this library as well is probably going to run at full rate.
Yeah, there's a commissioning agent. I can't change it until they sign off on it. So
the easiest way to adjust it is what you're doing there, but how about to completely disable the library?
So like I was saying earlier, you can unplug the sensor, or if you can't reach it because it's in the library, you go to the power pack, and you tell the power pack to stop following the photocell. So it's photocell follow mode, and you just disable it, right? And you just tell the power pack, stop following the photocell, you dumbass. You know, so yeah, well, yeah, I'm going to get fired for that one. I'm not used to being on tape, as you know. Yeah, so that's another way to do it. So. And on Franklin, the end of line is at the top of the old balcony, and if you're looking at the old stage, there's a GFX device over here. That's the end of line. Pull it off the wall, plug into the back of it. A GFX is a touchscreen.
Do you think the passwords are still administrative?
Yes. Yeah, because that's local to the software on your computer. So. Yes, absolutely. I did not program that whole school, but I have reprogrammed the library like 3 times. So, yes, because they kept changing how they wanted it.
When was last time?
Last time was probably 8 months after the school got turned over, so a year and a half ago. Yes, that was done by, so the added lights were done by Chris, was the tech that went out and did that. So. Yeah, so you guys can take this and go over there and like adjust it. You can turn it off. I don't care.
You still need that.
What's that?
Cable. You said that you still need that cable to do it, right?
Yes, and Franklin's cable, I believe, is still in the electrical room in a box like this big. This is left on top of the devices. So.
And that one's networked servers, right? So you don't have to worry about separate computers. You can just still.
If it's still on my computer. ETC, engineered, that's your theater. Sorry, I'm looking for, I do not have the acuity information on my computer. What's that?
It was done as by a contractor after the building was.
Yeah. Yeah, after it was started up. But she was asking if this building was networked, and I just can't remember. I think it is, but I'm not sure. I can tell you, I did the theater system over there, and because I was doing the theater, we hired someone else to do. So like here, Jason did the programming for the Enlight system while I was programming the ETC system here. So, sorry I couldn't answer that question, but you guys should have submittal drawings that look like this, right? So I'm going to talk about this real quick. Just to change gears, this is an Acuity submittal package. You guys shouldn't get these in your O&M, so you can look it up at Franklin, find the submittal package or whatever, and you can actually, from find the one-line diagram, and it will show you if it has a network backbone or not. And that network backbone looks like this. There's a NESI, bridge hub, and then the bridges, right? So in this school, you have a NESI for building A, B, C. Is this big enough for you guys? Do I need to zoom in? Oops, there we go. There we go. So you have a NESI, goes to a bridge hub, and then you got bridge 1 is area A, bridge 2 is area C. These nomenclatures are based off of the engineer drawings on the drawings. They're not just made up. So they should match what you get in your as-built, right? So they make sense. The one thing that I will say is that room numbers and things like that are the engineered numbers. If they've changed the room numbers since, yeah, you guys are nodding like you guys have dealt with this before, but if they've changed the room numbers right before they open, you have to look at the engineered drawings to know what room it is, right? Or if you leave the blue tape on the inside of the door, you guys know this trick? So like a lot of times, like when you're in a new building, there was one there earlier today. They have like blue tape like on the inside of the door. That's the engineered number, or sometimes they put it up in the corner. They hide them in places. Oh, it's on the outside of this door. It's right here on this edge. This is A103, which this building's the same. So you guys lucked out. And then building G, which is what we're in, has a NESI and one bridge. Right, so that's how you determine what your backbone looks like. And you can see this, right? So you can see this backbone, you have a NESI, bridge hub, and you have all these bridges. If I go and I take a look at our network system, and I log back in, I am networked to Jason's computer, which is downstairs, which is connected to the NESI right now, right? So we're mimicking a network system. We can see that building G, we're connected to building G. The other ones are offline. This is the NESI, right? And then you can see bridge 5, right? And then you can see everything connected to it. So if I go back to my submittal, bridge 5, right, is connected, and it's the only bridge there. Make sense? Cool. And then we go from here. There are layouts. So let's find G since we're standing in G. And this is my submittal with all of my notes about what rooms are done, which ones sequences have changed or whatever. So yours will be cleaner than this. You won't have all these spots and dots on it. But you can see in here, these are all the layouts to the spaces, right? So if I go, is this the basement? Yeah, lower level. Let's find this room, right? So that we're looking at the same thing. Probably this guy. And we go, yeah. So this is the room that we're in right now. Right, you can see that you got a switch location, a couple power packs. You can see that this is an older submittal. It isn't an as-built. You can see that there are 2 switches here instead of 1 switch, etc. You can see how they're daisy chained together by the red mark, right? Or I may be just looking at the wrong space. No, sorry. This is the room we're in. Sorry, guys. That's much better. So you can see how all of the Cat5 cables are actually plugged in. So it looks like the end of the line is actually the photocell right there. And it looks like the power packs are in that back room over there, right? So you can see on the layout where things should be, or approximately where they are. And then how they're all wired. And then you can take that and you can go to the one lines here, and you can see how I just selected one at random. Let's find one that's actually standalone. Here we go. So this is a zone. This is restroom 074. and you can see how everything's connected straight through, all the way to the end. There are serial numbers for everything, for every device, and Prairie has identified them in a booklet that I'm sure they're prepping right now for O&Ms, which is why I don't have it. But it's listed with this name right here, and then all the stickers and what type of device it's on, right? So if you needed to figure something out, you can actually, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. This is the serial number up there, right? So if I wanted to find a specific device on the network, and I know it's got to be something in here, like I got to change. I got to change the occupancy sensor in this space, and I know it's this serial number, and I don't want to spend the time to like go through this tree or whatever. You can actually click in here and find, type the serial number, and it pops up. Just like that. Make sense? Cool. You guys have not told me you needed a break. You guys probably need a break, don't you? All right. Let me finish. So one lines. I'm going to finish talking about the submittals. So give me 5 minutes. I'll give you guys a break, and then we'll come back and talk about network, how to access the network. So I can tell that this is a standalone zone, right? Because there's nothing coming off of it. If I selected any other, selected the wrong. If I selected any other one line, I can see that this is connected to a network because it tells me it's connected to bridge 1, port 2. Right? So on the one lines, it's telling me exactly where this is plugged into. Make sense? Cool. Sequence of operations. This is null and void because the printout that you have is accurate and what's going to be in your O&Ms. That will be in your O&Ms. The material on your job, like the parts and pieces, all the part numbers are listed here in the BOM. Warranty information is in the submittal here. And then in the submittal is all of the cut sheets for all of the devices, right? So if I take a look at my wall pods, right, I could actually take a look at it, and I can see, if you guys really wanted to know, you guys were talking about power, I can see the power consumption on it just by looking at the submittal and going to the cut sheet. So the submittal should have everything that you need to look up or reference when you're looking at the program. So any questions about the submittal, local zones, or anything? Or no, I just need a 15-minute break. How long are you guys scheduled today? Noon. To noon? Okay. So I have a lot to talk about. So let's just take 5 or 10 minutes. Let's take 10 minutes because you guys haven't taken a break at all. So see you at 11:25 after a few hours. So I don't take offense. Okay. So on a network system, right? I got a lot of information to cover in very little time, but on a network system, your access to it depends on what's available to you. And that seems kind of strange to sound and wishy-washy, but you can use your computer to connect locally to it via a local hotspot. So like I know that there's a bunch of like HVAC controllers out there that's got like a little hotspot. You type the IP number and you get into the system, right? This system has something very similar. And so Jason's computer downstairs is actually connected to this system the same way. Or actually, yeah, he's connected to it down there. So he puts his computer down, and then right here it says Wi-Fi hotspot network scheme, right? So when you're connected to the Wi-Fi hotspot down in the lower right-hand corner, you know, like you connect to your building network. If you open this up, I'm too far out of range to see it, But if I was on Jason's computer, you would see the word Eclipse with some numbers after it. That's the Eclipse module or the NESI module that you can click on that network, and then to log into the Wi-Fi, like any Wi-Fi hotspot, Starbucks, here at school, wherever you're going, you have a password, and that network key is Eclipse1234, all lowercase. Right, and then that allows you, gets you on the network or the Wi-Fi network that the Eclipse module is on, and then once that happens, you can open up SensorView just the same way that we did this, but you don't have to use the commissioning tool. If you log in via the Wi-Fi on a network system, you don't have to use the commissioning tool. You just log into SensorView just like we did when we did the commissioning tool, just like this, and you hit login, right?
So it's easier than taking apart to find the end of line.
I love network systems. They're way easier to deal with. It's a little confusing at first. Like if you're not a network person, it's a little bit confusing how to access it because there's multiple ways of accessing it, right?
I kind of missed the beginning of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like an individual network just for this.
Yes,
device.
you got a little hotspot just connected to the device. In fact, your device has it. This is its hotspot. And it's just a USB device connected to the top of the controller, right? So, hotspot.
And that little closet we were in that had that.
Yep.
We had one of those on top of that.
Yeah, and down here in the lower right-hand corner, you would see Eclipse with some numbers after it. If you look at your form, the SID is
7782.
Yeah, exactly. So you can log into there, and then you can use SensorView. Open it up the same way and access all the information. More than likely, though, whoever's doing the network, which I think is at the school level at the moment, the IT department hasn't activated the ports yet. They've ran cable to my devices, and they've given me an IP address. So when they get their network up and going, you can access this NESI from your computer by typing in, actually you can, if you load SensorView on your computer, sorry, I'm mixing something up. If you load SensorView on your computer, open it up, and you go to Gateways. So remember, right at the beginning I said go to Admin, and then you can go to Gateways. You can, up here in Gateway IP address, you can type the IP address and it's labeled LAN network scheme, LAN, local area network. That means wired network, right? So that's your school network. If you type the IP address there, hit discover, it will pull in all the information. This is the most important part. Remember how I said it's a database, right? So if you have it loaded on your computer, you have it loaded on your computer, you have it loaded on your computer, you all have different databases. So the first thing that you want to do when you go in on a network system, because you don't have a server level program, which I highly recommend you talk with your IT department and do, if you don't have that, you want to go to network management, because you're on the network, right? You want to filter to make your life easy, and select mismatched devices. I don't have any mismatched devices because I have the correct database. What mismatched devices mean is, hey, I have a setting here on my computer that says this aux sensor is 10-minute timeout. But out in the field, it says it's a 15-minute timeout. We're mismatched between what's in the field and what's in my database, right? So you want to filter to your mismatched devices. Again, that's just the filter button, selecting mismatch, right? And then you want to select those mismatched devices just by clicking here. I don't have any, so I'm just selecting random stuff, just so you know. And then I want to click on synchronize. Yeah, but you have one more question. It says, do you want to synchronize from SensorView or from devices, right? If you synchronize,
Which one is right?
yes, if you synchronize from SensorView and you're logging in for the first time and you synchronize from SensorView, you just erased your entire program. Your entire program.
This is kind of like our tablets when we have to do our time cards. We have to upload before we download. Because if we download before we upload, then we wipe out all the information.
That sounds very similar. Yes. Yeah. So what I always recommend is when you connect and you haven't connected to a network system in a while and you're using your local computer and not a server, which I highly recommend you talk to your IT department to set up, that they download SensorView to a server that you can remotely access. That way you don't have multiple programs out there. Yeah, you just use the one, right? And the server acts just like a computer. Your IT department can figure that out. They're really easy. You want to connect, select your mismatched devices, and synchronize from devices. You must synchronize from devices. Go get a cup of coffee, come back. Like if you have like a ton of devices, it's going to take a while. It's serial connection, right? It's dial up. Right. So, but if it's only like 6, it'll sync like that. So.
Why would it not be synced?
Because your database is different than what's out on the devices, right? So, like. Yeah.
So that's what you're saying. If there's 3 people working on it.
Mm-hmm.
One guy is doing some other stuff. It's going to be different than what.
Over time, even. So, say months go by, you don't know who's been out there. Device can be installed and changed, and then
It never got updated on the network.
No, well, you can't. It's whatever's on your computer, so you have to like physically go to the school and then sync your computer with the devices, or else it'll delete all the programs and you'll have to reprogram it from scratch.
Yes, which is why I recommend putting the software on a local server. So yes, exactly. Exactly. And literally all you have to do is like, hey guys, I just need a server that has this program on it. And they actually already have all this information because I asked this question before I started programming and said, no, we're not doing that.
Can you write that down before we leave, like, so that we can be like, this is the program that we need?
Yes. So the program is on the training form. Yep, exactly. And then in the submittal documentation, and actually the EC and the GC actually has all this information too, but in the submittal documentation, there is this thing called IT requirements, and it tells in IT speak what they're putting on the network, right? So, and the IT department has already seen this because they have given me an IP address. They just didn't want to host the program on a server, and I don't know why. So you'll have to take that up with them now that you understand the implications from an operational standpoint. So, and of course, I actually highly recommend, because there's a few, like you have Franklin Roosevelt, that one over there, I keep forgetting what it is called. Fabian. And this school now that all have network systems. I believe it would behoove you to consolidate all that into one server level program. So same database. Yeah, so when you think SensorView program, think database, because that's really what it is. SensorView is just a database interface. And then you save and you push the program or you pull the program. That's all that you're doing out of it, right? Which is why it gets very confusing with the multiple different ways of connecting and what program you're connecting from, right? So I know it's confusing. I can't make it easier for you because they didn't load it on a server, which would make it easy for you. But just think about, my computer is my database alone, and it may not match your database. So you have to synchronize first. That's the very first thing that you have to do. Once you're done, then you can play, right? So you're in here. I still recommend using the device tab. Do not use network management unless you understand what you're doing. The only thing that I would do with network management is change your occupancy sensor timeouts. Right? We have a standard labeling scheme for all of our devices. So if you actually type in OS dot, I did not hit dot, and you pull down, these are all the occupancy sensors in the building, right? And so you can select all the occupancy sensors, and then you can select your occupancy time delay, and you can change everything in the building to 30 minutes rather than 10 minutes. And you hit save, defaults, and apply now, right? If you're saving defaults, you're saving to your SensorView program, your database. If you're applying, you're pushing that program out to the devices, right?
Do you have to synchronize after that?
Nope. No, because you've made a change to your database.
Someone else comes in and looks at it, they would have to synchronize.
Yes.
Because they would still be seeing the old data.
Yes. Unless you're both using the same SensorView program on the server, and then you're all good. So that's the only thing I would use network management for. Otherwise, just use devices, go through. You can see that there are offline devices here. We have a cable unplugged off of this ARP, right? So let's just take a look at the network labeling scheme so you guys know what you're looking at. P5, that means it's a port 5, right? L00, that's the room that the device is in, right? And it's stairs and halls. That's the name of the local zone. That's what it's controlling, right? So if you're looking at your drawings and you're like, oh, there's an issue on the second level gallery, right? You can go, oh, that room number is L02. And all of a sudden, anything that's L02 comes up.
So if you put A103, it should be this one?
If it was connected to the network, that would be the case.
Oh, it's not. You're right. Okay, got it. Right.
Yes. Yeah. Again, another nuance to the system because it wasn't all connected because we're saving money. So, and then you have A2A is the fixture type. Right, so we identify the fixture it's connected to. PP is the power pack, or OS is aux sensor. If there was a photocell in here, is there a photocell in this PC? Oh, I spelled that wrong. Why am I having an issue? PC. Yeah, there's no photocell out here. Yeah, so there's no photocells on this particular net. On your other building there is. So you can use the search field to like really find something and kind of drive down into it. It is pretty consistent. I will send the EC so that they can include in their paperwork our labeling scheme that we use. So. Oh, and then if you have power packs and they have a letter after it, like this right here is the switch leg, right? And that switch leg is labeled on the drawings. All of these labels came right off of the drawings. It's just we try to keep the same order, same context, so that you can use it for searching, right? The search tool is your friend. And by the way, since you guys didn't see an emergency power pack, this is an emergency power pack. You can see because it's red. You know, this also says this is actually good too. If you have a problem with the device, this is the part number, and this is what it looks like, right? So you have a bunch of offline devices here, right? So if I go here and I select. What is this? Aux sensor. So this is an aux sensor, and here's the part number. Let's say that someone smashed this with a ladder, and you know it's just dead, right? You can take this down, replace it. It will still show up as offline right here. When you click on it, you're going to get this message at the top. SensorView has lost connection with this device. Please ensure that the device is attached to the network. Remove this device. Click that. If blank is replacement for this device, copy, program, and replace, right? Right. So you attach a new device, it's going to show up like this. It's going to show up as NCMPDT and some number, right? Because it hasn't been labeled yet,
So you
right?
have to remove first and then...
No.
Just copy programming.
Give me 2 seconds and I can answer that. So it's going to show up as this device right here, right? But you have highlighted the old device that's gray and offline like it is right now. From this drop-down menu, and I don't have a new device in here, so I can't show you exactly, but you would select that one that says CMPDT and some number that isn't labeled, right? And then hit copy program and replace, and it's going to copy the program of that device, associate all the channel programming to that device and to the other power packs that are associated with it, right? And then copy the label, paste the label in the new device, and delete the old one in the program, and it will push the program for the new occupancy sensor, and you can walk away. You don't have to remember how to program. You just pull the device out, select the new device you select the old device here, and then select the new device from the drop-down menu, and then hit this button.
You have to do that while the old device that's damaged is still attached?
No. All of these devices, we unplugged this so I could show you this message, right? All of these are not connected to the network right now. That's why they're gray. And they are offline.
You unplug the damaged one, put a new one in, and then that's going to show up.
Yep. You replace the damaged one, and then you select the one that is showing as offline, select the new one that's unlabeled from the drop-down menu, and then hit copy and replace, and you're done.
How are those in the new menu? How did they get there?
So this is every other device on this port. Right, so I can't show you what the new device is going to look like because I don't have one.
My question is, how would it know once you plug in the new device?
Discovery. As soon as you plug in a new device it doesn't recognize, the system automatically goes into discovery, and then it populates.
So everything in that new list is basically it's been discovered, but it hasn't been entered yet?
In this list, this is just listing all of the devices on this port, right? So for the new one, you're going to look for something that looks like this label, right? So you're you guys can see that.
That's a generic list that comes down. This is the list that's actually been specified for that area.
Yes. Right. So a new device is not going to have a label, and it's going to be like NWPDT16 and then the serial number of that device. Right, and so from the drop-down menu, all that you're looking for is this. I can't show you, but I can. You're looking for this in here, basically.
The serial number, give me what you put out.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, here's a good example. This is a default label right here. You can see the serial number right there. So, make sense? Cool, because these are all the online devices.
Right, and that individual serial number is just for that device in the whole school that only assigned to that device.
So like if you had a serial number, which I'm getting right now, and you had no idea where it is, and you're like, it's somewhere in all of this ungodly mess, right? This is a small building, but the other one is very big. You can type the serial number in here, and it will pop up, and you can select it. Right? The search is your friend, right? If you want to find occupancy sensors, all you have to do is type OS dot. Why is it printing backwards?
It's because of your splitter.
I think this is TeamViewer. I think it's because I'm like out to the internet and then to Jason's computer downstairs.
Good mirror.
Yeah.
Or he's down and putting that in for you.
Yeah. I'm just having a bad day, I think. There we go. So these are all the occupancy sensors. And again, I didn't tell you guys this, but up here you can switch between the ID numbers and the labels. And the labels are what we typed in. So if you don't like our labels, just go over here and change your labels. It's just a data field, right? And you can hit save, and it'll change the label of that device. I'm not going to hit save because I don't want to change the label of the device.
So if we had a simple protocol where somebody came and damaged the switch, then you can't just put a new switch in and walk away.
If it's a switch and it's channel 1, you lucked out, you can put it in and walk away. If it's channel 2, you can buy a channel 2 switch, plug it in and walk away.
So if all I had is a channel 1 switch.
You would have to, if it's a local zone, you would have to commission in.
Or if I go to that network program.
Exactly. Yep. Okay. Something unique to the networks that you guys all need to know before you leave, because I have 15 minutes. All of the device, all the programming works the same way as before. But you see this bar right here? This is business hours gallery, right? This is the profile change that Jason was talking about. And profiles are like our time clock options. You can see from 6 to 6, we're going to operate underneath the business hours profile. What is a profile? A profile are these things, and there are several of them. They are a temporary override to the default settings of the device, right? So, so let's take exterior off, right? Exterior off profile turns the exterior lights off from 30 minutes after sunrise to 30 minutes before sunset. Right? You can see the schedule down over here, right? And you can adjust it, right? You can change it to a, you can click on the astronomical and you can change it to a specific time of day, or you can click back on the astronomical and that type of stuff. And then you hit save up over here and you've changed that time, right? But between this time, the exterior, so let's go back to devices and type in EXT for exterior. My exterior devices on this building from 6:39 a.m. to 7:49, because it's astronomical, it's following the sun, right? Today, right? That light is going to be off. You notice that in the timeline up here, there isn't anything that says the light is going to be on. Only something that says it's going to be off. The normal state, because we want the default setting of exterior lights to always be on, because we want it to be a nuisance call and not an emergency call, right? So the default state is that override function where we said override on, where the default setting, so when there isn't a profile active, it reverts back to its default setting, right? It makes time clock a little more cumbersome because you have to think, oh, this is a temporary override and this is the state. But what we can accomplish with this type of function is this funky hallway thing where during business hours, an unoccupied state only goes down to 50% and goes up to 100%. And during outside of business hours, it goes to 0 and then up to 100 during occupied, right? The default state of our system is for unoccupied time, right? So if we're looking at the profile for business hours for halls and stairways, right? It is overriding the default state where things go off and then come back on. And the way that we override it is that we have these settings. These are the specific and only settings it's overriding during this specific time, right? So the idle time until dim changes to 20 minutes. The maintain dim level when vacant turns on, right? Because we don't want the lights to turn off. We only want them to dim to a certain level because this is what we were told to do. Not necessarily you want it to be this way. The time delay is 30 minutes because we were told to change the time delay. I forgot about that. During business hours, the occupancy time delay is 30 minutes, and after hours, it's only 15 minutes. Totally forgot to tell you guys that. Sorry. It's in that little chart, though. And then the unoccupied dim level is set to 50%. So what that means is we've changed the occupancy time delay to 30 minutes from 15, and we changed the unoccupied bright level to 50%, and we are stopping it from turning off because we wanted to maintain it at 50% even if it's unoccupied during business hours, right? So if we take a look at one of these hallway devices, right? And I type in hall because that's the easiest way to find something. Whoops. There's one right here. So the default state of this device is for an unoccupied dim level is at 0. and maintain dim level when vacant is off. But during profiles, you can see that maintain is on and unoccupied is at 50. So it's not a time clock that says lights turn on now. It's what behaviors do you want to change, right? And so we create a profile that changes the behavior. So it's from this time to this time. I wish my mouse was a different color and make it easier to see. But from time A to time B, this profile is going to be active, right? So the question that you guys want to ask after you log into the system, log into sensor view, you guys want to change this time because you have custodians in and you don't want the building to be dark or whatever. Someone asks you to change it because they don't like the lights turning off. You can change this to 10 p.m. just by doing this, right? And then hit save. I must have mistyped it somehow. 10, there it is. Once you put in a valid character sequence, you can hit save. And then you've changed your time clock. Does that make sense? It's probably I keep saying it, but it's probably the most complicated thing about our system is understanding profiles. But if you just think of it as a temporary override to the default settings, and you can change any behavior, whether it's on, off, or you know, dim levels, then it makes a little more sense. Any other important things? I got 5 minutes. Questions that you need answered because we got 5 minutes. Yes.
As far as troubleshooting, that's basically what we're going to come to. I noticed that it says on here about doing a 90-degree angle across power path and lines and stuff. We have someone come in and put some power. What does it do? It's an inductive pump.
Yep.
It's not shielded or nothing.
Yeah, so that all depends on how the contractor installed it, and I'm not 100% sure. If you have conduit, right, you're shielded because you're grounded. If you're freelining it, that 90 is much more important.
Oh, okay.
Right? So you can follow conduit as long as your bonding's good, you should be fine. You know, it's really long runs that we have issues with, like your hallway over here. If you got 277 running this way and your data conduit is right here, you may have problems. But we would have saw that before. Yeah, and
sometimes we'll have people come in and do more electrical.
True.
They won't be aware of that.
True.
So what is the indication of something like that?
It doesn't receive commands, so it could be anything from it doesn't respond to a switch, it doesn't respond to an occupancy sensor, to it's not following the time clock. This section of the hallway is following the time clock, but this one isn't.
It's just doing some weird things.
Yeah, it's not tracking the inputs it's receiving.
Okay.
If that makes better sense. Anyone else have questions that they need answered? Yes.
Warranty on the system.
Warranty is a standard warranty, I believe, on this job. Sorry, every job is different. I know that the contractors probably have a labor warranty, but I'm the manufacturer, so I can talk about parts warranty.
Contractors have no one.
Okay, perfect. This is your warranty statement and 5 years for product on this one.
And that's all the devices?
Yes. And that's from workmanship and things like that. If you get a power hit and you lose some programming, that's not warranty. You know, you're lucky you're not in Bend, so that's good. Bend gets a lot of power strikes.
Well, that was my next question, because we actually do get a lot of power outages in our district, and the PPL area tends to be a little bit harder hit on the schools.
So power outages, not a huge problem, right? So let's say that the power goes out and comes back on. Everything's going to reboot. Everything's going to maintain its memory. I think it's like it maintains its memory for 190 days or something like that. Something absurd, right? The problem is when you hit brownouts, right? If you go below 90 volts but don't go to 0, like any computer anywhere, it will freeze, right? Because the voltage dropped below its operating power that the processor can do, but it didn't get low enough to actually shut it off. So it just goes down and goes, I can't do anything. It's like running out of steam, right? And so you just stop, and it presents as being frozen. It's a simple fix. Just cycle the power, and it will come back. I don't know. That's an electrician question.
So to reset and turn off the power, that would be back to the central, what do you call those, touch screens?
Yeah. So the easiest way for me is I just open the box and I pull the power header and I put it back in. If you have a problem in a local zone, just shut the circuit off for that zone at the breaker panel, count to 5 and turn it back on. But again, that's only for like brownout situations, and normally they're rare in Portland, but you guys know that better than I do, so I don't get a lot of phone calls from Portland because of brownouts, let's put it that way. Surges, like anything, we can absorb some surges, but if there's not a surge protector on the line, you can fry things, right? So let's talk about if the NESI goes down, right? What happens to all of your devices, right? Because profiles is controlled by the NESI, right? Because this is the time clock, right? That means your exterior lights stop working. Anything that has global channels, which is like your stairwells, you know, and anything that and your profiles, right? So like 250% into full. The reason why we chose that the lights would go off and then go back up to full as its default state was because if this went down, you could go, oh, it's during business hours and the occupancy sensors are allowing the lights to turn off. My exterior lights will not turn off. I have a problem with the NESI. That function is dead. So you can go cycle the power or try to log into it to see if you can communicate with it. If cycling the power doesn't work and trying to log into it doesn't work, you may have gotten a surge and it probably fried something. It could be a dead component. Any one of these could be dead. The power supply could be dead. The computer could be dead, or the Nlight module could be dead. So
profiles are all on there.
Yes.
And you have to replace that. Someone has to come in and redo all those profiles?
No, because
take that from that.
So, good question, because the last thing I'm showing you is if you type in using HTTPS, exactly like I have it on that sheet, and the IP address of the device, right? So up here I have 10.176.8.170, and then you lose that login information. Man, I'm having a hard time speaking. Admin and Acuity 1234, and you are welcome to change all this, but if you change it, I don't know the password anymore and I can't help you, just so you know. This is an onboard web server on the actual Eclipse, right? There is, under System, Backup and Restore. You can see that there are backups that we've created on here already, right? You can click on Download and download it to your computer, store it on a server somewhere, and then if it happens and you have to replace this, you put the new one in and you hit Restore. And it will ask you, or import from PC is actually what you want to click. Restore is if it's on there, but you click import from PC, you select or drop your backup file, and all of your profiles come back.
Now, how is that updated? Profiles back? If we change things and we change them?
If you change profiles or anything that's on the server level, you want to come into backup and you want to, let's go back here, cancel. Yes, I know. I'm in the middle of an operation. Sorry. Yes, I'm sure. You come back here and you say create backup. You create the backup, you give it a name, you hit next, and you select what you want to back up. I just select all. I select all and everything. It takes a little longer, but it's totally worth it. So that's how you back up the NESI, right? So devices, the sensor view thing where you do restore and replace, copy and replace, right? This, you have to push the backup. Now let's say you had a major power strike, and you have devices all over the building that aren't damaged but have forgotten their program, right? And you're like, oh my gosh, I don't want to reprogram 150 devices, right? You can actually, from SensorView, right, because it's a device, right, so we're using SensorView to program it, you can go to Admin, you can go to Databases, and you can import a database. So if you were smart enough and you exported a database of the settings after you made a change, and you exported that database and made it its current database, right? It's an SVG file. Oh, this is Jason's computer, not mine. Sorry, Jason. Mine here, database config. There it is. These are all the databases that we pulled when we were on site, right? It ends in SVDO, SensorView database, right? So go back to Jason's computer. You can import it. You can click on import and select that database, and it will import the database to here. And all of a sudden you'll see all your devices over here, but they'll probably be all mismatched, right? Because your field is dumb, it forgot everything, right? But you have all of the information on the database. So what do you do in this case? So you sync, exactly right. So you go to network management, because it's a network-wide operation, and you select everything, right? Because you don't know what is affected and what it hasn't. And then you hit synchronize, and in this particular case, rather than clicking from devices, you click from SensorView, because you know that the database that you loaded into your SensorView is the correct one to correct the problems out on site. So you want to push it from SensorView out to the devices. Does that make sense? I'm trying to use hand gestures like you're playing, but you know, hopefully it's helpful. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so those are that, and that's an epic failure. Like, I've done one of those in 3 years, so I don't suspect you're going to have a problem, but it's there. So it puts people at ease. Any other questions? Oh, time clock. So the Eclipse module where you did the backup, right? We typed in the IP address, we logged in or whatever. Under System, Location and Time, you can adjust your time clock. It is set to the PPS network at the moment. It is not connected at the moment because your IT department hasn't activated the port yet. But when they do, you probably won't have to adjust the time clock. If this system remains off of the network, you might have to come in and just update the time now and again. And it's as easy as say, get time from computer and hit apply. Done. One last thing. I know I keep saying that, but this is true. If you hit home, there's this thing called nLight Explorer. nLight Explorer mimics that little touch screen that's by each Eclipse, right? And when it loads, you can see all of your online devices. You can see the 18 offline devices that we have because we unplugged that cable, right? And you can see its label, you can see its serial number, and you can see what port it's actually attached to, right? So this is a good troubleshooting tool, but the value here is actually this guy right here, Profiles. From here, you can activate or deactivate your profiles at will, right? So you can override your time clock from this web interface, right? So I just turned on your exterior lights, right? And if you were connected to the server, you can do that from anywhere within your district. someone goes, hey, my exterior lights aren't on and it's midnight, and there's a on-call guy, you can log in to this sensor view. Oh, what's the address to that guy out there? You can log in and go, oh yeah, it's off for some reason. Turn it on, and then troubleshoot it tomorrow morning.
Now, you could feasibly also do that on an Android device, right?
No. Well, it depends if the Android device supports HTTPS communication. Some do, some do not. So, because it's a secure. And that's really all that I have for you guys today. If you want to see the Bluetooth device, you guys can stick around for 5 or 10 minutes and I'll show you how to connect with Bluetooth. So.